Thank you. Welcome. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals for Town of Wareham for tonight's meeting, Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. It is 6:30 p.m., and we are at the room 320 of the Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. I want to call the meeting to order. I make a roll call. My far right, Wilma Engerman. Our clerk, Jim Akabachi. Far left, Attorney John Kendrick. Carl Baptiste to my left, myself, the chair, Nazir Al-Khalasi. Also, we have town planner Ken Buckland. We have independent consulting attorney Paul Haverty, and town consulting, independent consulting Charles Rowley. We have some business, quick business to do for the minutes of February 28, 2018.
I've reviewed those minutes. I'm satisfied as they are presented. I move we accept them as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Carl. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next one.
We also have the minutes from the previous,
Yep, April 11, 2018.
and I've reviewed those, and they are also satisfactory. I move to accept as presented.
I have a second.
Second.
Second by Carl. All in favor, say aye.
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 Wilma, minutes, you good?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. 500. All right, very good. Public hearings, 10-18, Timothy and Christine Smith, 83 Pinehurst Drive. Want to come forward, please? Okay.
Take this away from there. The Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on April 25th, 2018, at 6:30 PM in room 320 of the Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to consider petition number 10-18 for a variance/special permit from the requirements of Article 6, Table 621, Article 13, Section 1335 of the Wareham zoning bylaws, to Timothy and Christine Smith, 97 Chamberlain Road, Uxbridge, Mass. 01569, seeking to enlarge an existing single-family dwelling located at 83 Pinehurst Drive, Wareham, Mass., shown on Assessors Map 46A1, Lot 120, in the R30 zoning district.
All right, very good. Name and address for the records, and let us know what you're doing.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rick Sharon. I'm the engineer that's prepared the plans for Mr. Smith, who's with us this evening.
Thank you. Do you want to brief us?
The proposal here, I'm not sure if you have a plan handy there, but one on the board here.
Yeah, we have that.
You have that. All right, you can see, in fact, we've outlined it in the letter dated March 15.
Is
Excuse
your
me?
microphone?
Is the
Is the light green?
Green light on, yes.
Just bring it towards you, like this, yeah. There you
Is that
go.
better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The proposal here is to add an 8-foot addition across the front of the existing single-family house, and then put a full second story above it, basically to make this a year-round residence for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It does reduce front setbacks. However, we are increasing the sideline setback because, as an issue of lot coverage, we're trying to stay under the 25% maximum. This was brought up in Mr. Akina's review, that the original proposal brought us above 25%. So the proposal now is to remove 2 of the decks, one on the side where the driveway is, another one at the rear of the house, and that, those calculations are in the upper right-hand portion of the plan. It reduces the lot coverage with the addition to 24.5%. This gets it in line with most of the other residences. We did look at everything within the 50-foot radius around the existing lot, and I believe out of the 11 properties, I think we found 2 of them that were over 25%, but it wasn't a common thing, so we've brought that back down under 25%. I believe that would allow us to work just within the confines of the special permit provisions of the bylaw, so that's what we're requesting. In terms of a variance for exceeding the 25%, that's not something we're asking for at this point.
All right, do you have an existing site plan, existing conditions?
think we just have to point to the plan and say the existing condition, the house is shown with the addition added to it, so no, we have just the,
So without the front porch, you mean?
yes, right now, existing conditions would be a 20.5-foot setback to the corner of the house,
Yeah,
and that'll be reduced by 8 feet down to 12.5 feet.
all right.
Side setback would be increased because we're moving that deck on the right-hand side, so that would go from 10.6 to 16.5 feet.
All right, so that deck on the side is gonna go, yeah, remove deck. Do you have architectural plans?
Yes.
Can you pass them quick? I start with the board. Wilma, do you have a question?
No.
Ken, you wanna say anything? Jim?
I was listening and reading, so I may be asking something you already said. Regarding the lot coverage, I noticed that the building commissioner's letter said that you raised it from 21.9 to 28.3. Did I hear you say you've since, in the plan we're looking at,
Yes,
reduced it to 25, which is conforming?
24.5, yes.
24.5?
Yes.
That's all for now from me.
Jen?
I would like to hear from Mr. Requena on what do you believe is, in light of the alterations that the applicant has reported have been made, where do you think that leaves us with what's required?
Just for the record, David Pequina is also in the meeting.
I haven't had a chance to look at the new plan today. It got emailed to me later this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to see it, but I can't really argue with his calculations right now. If it's a certified calculation, I would tend to go with that. Doesn't look a lot different than what was originally proposed, but
It's existing non-conforming, right?
it is,
Okay.
it is.
Jen, you good?
Yeah.
Carl? Anyone on the audience want to speak in favor? Against? I hear none. I don't have a problem. I think we treat it as a special permit, being none, it's not detrimental, more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's not imposing any detriment to the neighborhood more than it is. And it is existing non-conforming, it's just increasing non-conformity. So I don't know how the board feels about it.
We've offered it to the public. Nobody had any comments. I make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing.
Do I have a second in closing? Second by Carl. All in favor to close, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. 500 to close. Next motion, we're gonna get a relief from Article 13, 1335, whether it's special permit or a variance.
I move that we have a special permit condition here, and
Do I have a second? Second by Carl. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain. Oppose, 410. It carries special permit. Wishes.
I move to grant as requested.
With the standard conditions.
Standard conditions.
Okay, very well. So we'll move as requested, as proposed with the,
Is there a plan that?
Yeah.
Per plan?
by Shannon Associates Consulting Engineer out of Rochester, Mass, dated on February 28, 2018.
Well, does this revise, that's not the right
Revised March
plan.
15th.
So,
I'm sorry, yeah. Revised March 15, 2018, sorry.
that's the one that we're,
March 15?
March 15, 2018, by Shannon Associates, Inc., Rochester, Mass, with the
Okay.
standard condition. So
And the finding that the expansion, the expansion will be not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood as well.
okay, very well. Do I have a second on that? So that motion added to it, what Ken said, is not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. Do I have a second on that?
Didn't we already vote on that to go into this?
Well, he wants on the special
Okay.
permit, on the conditions he wants to do.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
So motion by Jim, do I have a second? Second by Carl, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
No.
opposed, so 410, it carries, thank you.
You got stuff to hand in here?
Ken?
Before we read the next one, let's sign this one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Sign and pass. You can put that in there. Thank you.
All right, next thing in the agenda, what do I do with it? Petition 11-18, Deborah Becky, 13 Onset Bay Lane. Ken, do you mind, Wilma?
Did that last folder come back?
It's right here, waiting for Wilma.
Okay.
Just give us a second.
Thank you. And thank you. This goes in there. Is this one for each? And is this just, this is
There's
one for
four.
me and,
There's 4 there.
okay.
Charlie.
Okay, here you go. This,
Isn't that going
oh,
here?
yep,
Yeah.
sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
I'll take one of those and you can have the other 3.
Here you go.
This is the next one?
Yep.
Okay. Zoning Board of Appeals to hold a public hearing on April 25th, 2018 at 6:30 PM in Room 320 of the Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to consider petition number 11-18 for a variance/special permit from requirements of Article 6, Table 622, Article 13, Section 1335 of the Wareham zoning bylaws to Deborah K. Becky, 13 Sycamore Lane, Hingham, Mass. 02043, seeking to raise a portion of a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling and replace it with a larger, more non-conforming addition located at 13 Onset Bay Lane, Buzzards Bay, Mass. That's on Wareham Assessors Map 2, lots 81A in the Onset Village 2 zoning district.
All right. Name and address for the records and brief us.
Jim Peterson, registered land surveyor with Alpha Survey Group, 695 Wareham Street in Middleborough.
Yep. Ma'am?
Deborah Becky, 13 Sycamore Lane, Hingham, Mass.
And sir?
Matthew Finnegan, 13 Sycamore Lane, Hingham, Mass.
Thank you. Sir, go ahead.
What we've done is prepared a plan for our client that shows the existing dwelling, the portion that's to be raised, which has been hatched, and a portion of the, or the new addition that's to be built onto the existing dwelling. The addition will be on it'll be a foundation on a footing, and it'll be a 2-story building. The 1.5-story is currently on piles, so there's actually space between the ground and the bottom of the dwelling. The client is asking for permission to build this addition for purposes of a growing family, to make upgrades to their existing dwelling, and to be able to accommodate for an expanding family and relatives visiting.
All right. Do you have any pictures of the existing property,
Yes,
please? And architectural plans,
yes.
please? Now, which one's existing here?
Sorry, this is the structure right here.
And you're gonna erase this and build this one?
No, this used to be one lot that contained these two buildings.
Oh, so that's the lot right here.
Yes, so they actually subdivided these two buildings out. Our client bought this building and now wants to raise the back of this.
This section, and add this little shaded area.
Actually, the addition would be all this here, it'd be raise this portion
Okay.
and build this here.
So you're just adding that basically on the land, that little section?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, okay, now I know which one.
Yeah, this is their house,
Yep,
this is an abutter who just
Yep.
put an addition to the back
Yes.
of theirs.
similar, yep.
Yes,
So this is the abutter, like similar thing,
yes.
all right. Do you understand, Jim? This is the house, they're doing something similar to this, like this?
Yep.
Pass. All right, I'll start.
I have a letter from one of the abutters who has given their approval of the project. It's actually the house that you see that has the current addition added to it. There was a second letter, which we're not in receipt of. It's actually the owner of the property before, that had the property subdivided, and our client bought from. We do have that available on a cell phone. If you want to read that letter, I can provide you with a copy of the letter from the other abutter as well.
Yeah, that one letter you have would be good.
Well, we have this one. Is this one from Latica?
Yes. Oh,
So you have both then?
good.
Do you have this one here?
I do not.
Okay, very small.
So they sent it here.
Thank you. These need to be read into the file. Want to see them?
They must have sent it directly here, because he doesn't.
Read some letters for the file. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, this one's dated April 2nd, 2018. It's addressed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, to whom it may concern. Our home is located at 11 Onset Bay Lane. We live next door to the home owned by Matt Finnegan and Deborah Becky at 13 Onset Bay Lane. I'm writing this letter to encourage you to please overturn the rejection of their building permit. The addition will not obstruct views, nor will it be out of keeping with the historical charm of the property. As you know, the kitchens and baths in these turn-of-the-century cottages were added on rather randomly many decades ago, and typically weren't even part of the original homes. The kitchen at 13 Onset Bay Lane barely accommodates 2 people. Moving the footprint will give the family a workable kitchen with no discernible downside to the neighbors, the neighborhood, or the beauty of their home. The other letter is dated March 26th, also addressed to the board. Dear Chairman, this one's from Jean Liedeka. I think I'm saying it. You put this in the folder? Or? Okay. As the owner of the home at 20 Hammond Street, Onset Buzzards Bay, immediately south of 13 Onset Bay Lane, literally within 10 feet, I'm writing to support Mrs. Deborah K. Becky's application for a variance/special permit for Lot 81A of the Assessors Map 2 in the Onset Village 2 zoning district. The old house at 13 Onset Bay Lane, which I owned prior to selling to Mrs. Becky, is already non-conforming to zoning rules, Article 6, Table 622, Article 13, Section 1335, put in place after its construction at the turn of the 20th century, keeping the same size footprint and building up as Mrs. Becky intends on a portion of the house away from Onset Bay Lane, will not negatively affect anyone. I, her closest neighbor, have no issue with her plans, and no one from Onset Bay Street itself or further north along the street should be affected because the next further north along Onset Bay Street house has received a similar variance a few years ago. Please grant Mrs. Becky the variance, thank you. If you need additional input, please feel free to contact me via phone or email, as I am not able to attend the April 25 hearing. I'm asking my husband Randall Saltzman to witness my signature. It's signed.
Is there anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of this project? Against? I hear none. Wilma, you have a comment?
Yep.
What is it?
First of all, the lot is, only 1,127 square feet. And the, first floor is 400 square feet. Now, they want to add on to this, and according to the assessor's office, the house is over the property line on the right-hand side. I don't, and I can't see. But that's, because I went looking at the size of the lot, when I went down to look at the house, I just couldn't see adding on, going up, but, I mean, adding on to the back, and I cannot see here, and understand why I would not want any more of a house in that small area, living there. And knowing the size of the lots are supposed to be down in the OV2. It's supposed to be a heck of a lot bigger than the ones that are there now, so we can't take and add and make it more non-conforming than they are. And that's all.
Just for the record,
Yeah.
the building is not over the property line.
Well,
It's on the property,
It's on the property.
right, because after you subdivided it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you get that, Wilma? When they subdivided it, they put it in the property.
well,
Let me ask you about that little deck to the left. What's that?
I'm going by the layout down in the assessor's office on the maps. And when you look on the map for each area and each house, it shows that the house is over the property line. So, I mean, they better take care of that down in the assessor's office too.
Yeah, I mean, assessor's plans aren't based on actual on-the-ground surveys.
Right. But just the deck I was asking you about,
Yes,
whose
sir.
deck is it?
Looking at the pictures, that's,
Goes in between?
yeah, it goes in between. I don't know if you would call it a combined, or if you think of it
Also,
as a
you
joint.
both use it?
We both use it.
So that was a part previously when it used to be one parcel before they subdivided?
Right.
I'm assuming it's in a deed and everything, right? That, or a contract that you both use it or something? I mean, how does that work? Who uses the deck?
Do you have cross easements or anything in your deed that you're aware of that enable that to be happening?
I don't
You
know
know.
that it's official. The woman who sold us the property and the people on the other side have been our friends for 40 years. And so we have, perhaps it's a more informal relationship. I don't know if it's in the deed.
Okay,
Should be an easement then. On record.
Like the original plot plan?
not that it's of any of our business how you can have a relation with your neighbors, or if the deck has been there forever. I guess that's not what's before us, so. But the property, the foundation is inside, the concrete is in the property.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Jim?
No questions.
I had my computer.
Jen,
I don't have any questions.
Carl? Anyone in the audience? I guess there was none. Ken, you want to say something?
Where do you park?
We park
Yeah.
actually on our neighbor's property. Mrs. Litka, who wrote the letter, she has kind of a three-space thing, and we usually pull in there, and she has another car that she pulls in. So because we're close friends, we park there.
It seems to fit in with the character of the neighborhood.
Very much, yeah.
I mean, everybody parks in the street there.
Yes.
All right, anyone else want to add something? I hear none. Move to close.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. All right. So we're gonna see if we treat it as a variance or special permit. Jen, you wanna put your 2 cents on that?
I'll defer to someone else.
Okay, someone wanna make this,
I think we'll, again, treat it as a special permit and not a variance. I do not find this becoming detrimental to the neighborhood.
okay, so motion by Jim, be not more detrimental to the neighborhood as an existing non-conforming. Do I have a second? Second with Jim? Second by Carl. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
No.
Okay, so 410. Now,
It's a special permit.
so it's a special, it's okay, now wishes.
You know, it's a unique situation over there, and I just don't see any benefit in denying, so therefore I move to go ahead and grant, as requested per plot plan, 13 Onset Bay Lane, Buzzards Bay, Mass., prepared by Deborah Becky and Matthew F. Finnegan, 1360 Sycamore Lane, Hingham, Mass., dated 2/16/2018.
All right, with the standard condition, I'm assuming?
Yes.
All right, do I have a second for Jim's motion?
Second that.
No? Second by Carl, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Jen?
Aye.
Aye, 410, carries, thank you. You all set? Thank you.
This is all on that. Anything else to come in on this one that we're looking at right now for the file, so we don't get things all mixed up?
Just let's sign it, get it out of the way. Jen, do you mind the plans?
Oh, I apologize.
It's okay. Oh, hi, Len.
You're so engrossed in your reading,
Always.
always. Wilma, do you have anything from that last one to hand in, or is it already over here?
I already handed it over.
Over here already?
You've got it already.
Thank you.
All right, we have continued public hearing, 3-18, Leonard Cabela's, 4 Union Ave. All right, that hearing is open, still open from last time. Okay, just a name and address for record, and
Len Cubelis, 55 Collier Road in Situate.
Jamie Souza, 6 Speranza Lane in Buzzards Bay.
all right, then wanna continue where we left it at?
Certainly, thank you. We wanted to address some of the concerns that were brought up by members of the board. I think there was primarily a concern regarding this property on the 3 units and the size of the units. And we're certainly willing to bring it down to 2 units. If the board sees that as favorable, would be able to meet the minimum size requirements for the units.
All right, so you're gonna cut it down, now, how big each unit now, the size becomes?
We haven't laid it out, but we essentially end up with 450 square feet that we can divide up between the additional 2 units, between the other 2 units, so they grow by about 200 square feet.
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. You got 3 units, and what's the average of each of the 3
the other one?
units? About,
We had 3 units. One was 630 square feet. Another center unit was 450 square feet, and the third unit was 675 square feet.
so the two ends are 6 and the one in the middle is 4.
Correct. And what we're intending to do is to basically split that middle unit in 2 and share it with the 2 units. So they'll be close to 850 square feet total with closets and restrooms. Just real quick, if you took out the closets and the restrooms, it adds up to about 100 square feet. So we're still well over the 640, I think, was the minimum size.
Thank you.
All right, so,
You wanna,
I guess it's still,
what are we at here?
this is for Union Ave.
Oh, we got the wrong file in front of us? Okay, so we gotta be careful what we hand back.
Yeah, I kept 197 here,
Okay. That's 197.
right here. All right, feedback, anyone in the audience for 4 Union Ave for the apartments?
The lady'd like to speak.
You wanna come forward, please? Just sit down and name and address for the record.
Jovina Dean, 6 Union Avenue. I'm in favor of them fixing, like they said, for 2 apartments in that downstairs of the 4th. I'm in favor of it.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor or against? All right, so Wilma, what do you think? So that's definitely a variance. It's not a special permit.
The only thing is, what we discussed is that, the apartment in the middle was not up to the zoning laws.
Right, but he
Was
changed it, so he's
450.
gonna make him 2 now instead of
Gonna
3.
make them 2.
So they're gonna be
I didn't
well
hear
over
him
the
say that.
650.
All right, what are the sizes of the apartment that he's gonna make?
I think,
There'll be approximately 850 square feet gross, and about 750 square feet if you eliminate closets and bathrooms. So they'll be over the
the 650, what the town asked.
right, 650 is the minimum size, so we'll be at about 750 square feet. So we're no longer asking for a variance on that.
Well, you're asking for a variance for the use.
Yes, but
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, on the
from that
size,
issue.
yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy?
I'm just curious, I got a plan here, I couldn't read it, but, not everybody has the benefit of seeing the plan. How many bedrooms in each of these 2 units now?
There'll be 1 bedroom.
1 bedroom?
Yes.
And,
That's the old
you know,
plan.
the market bears the rent, I get that, but what kind of rent would these things bring, do you guess?
They would bring in the $1,000 to $1,200 a month, right?
Because between location and
In that
demand, et
location.
cetera. Yeah. And if you said today they're available to be moved into May 1st, do you think you'd have tenants by May 1st? Is the demand that strong?
We'd have it by 8 AM.
You'd have it by 8 AM tomorrow?
Gotta build them first.
Yeah. Well, no, but he's answering my question. I said if they were available, you know, yeah.
Strong.
There's a
we're
strong
finding
demand,
that
there's a need.
There's a strong market for good quality units.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thank you.
Jen?
I don't have any questions.
Carl? All right,
I think we should move to close the public portion of this hearing.
all right.
So I make that motion.
Do I have a second to close?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, so it's closed. Just 1 minute, please.
I'm good with that. For Union.
Lenny, how many total apartments in that building?
There's 8 existing units, 4 2-bedrooms and 4 1-bedrooms.
Where's David? David, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I know we closed the public hearing, just clarification. The Article 6, Table 622 in the Village District, it says 15,000 square feet of land. Do you have 15,000 there?
Total, the whole building?
Oh, 11, okay, I'm sorry.
It's
11
11.
residential required
down to
15,000.
10
Okay,
now.
okay, so it is a variance. I thought you have 15,000. All right, sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you for your input, Dave.
All right, now what's the wishes? What do you guys want to do? You need a variance for for a use.
I make a motion to grant the variance for 2 units, 2 additional units.
To be each over 650 square feet net living space, excluding closets and bathrooms. So I have a motion by Carl. Do I have a second on that?
I apologize, what was the motion?
The motion to grant 2 apartments to contain each minimum 650 square feet, excluding closets and bathrooms.
I'll second.
We have a second by Jen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Carl. Okay, so 500. So this carries. So you're good for 2 units.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next victim.
Do I need to write a lot here? You heard it, you know,
Yeah,
you can
got it
address it.
covered.
Let's sign it, okay. If you will. Okay. Thank you, sir. For Union. This mine or yours?
Excuse me, it's yours.
Okay.
All right, sorry. We continue public hearing 3-18, Lancabelis 7-18, Lancabelis 197, Onset Ave. Public hearing still open, so do you want to come back and brief us, Lenny? Again, your name for the records.
Excuse me. Len Cubelis, 55 Collier Road in Situate.
Jamie Souza, 6 Bronze Lane, Buzzards Bay.
All right, just brief us back.
Okay, just briefly, as the board recalls, we were here about a year ago with requesting a 2-story structure. It was the same footprint as we're requesting right now. At that time, there were some significant concerns raised regarding the size of the unit, regarding the potential to expand the second floor residential units, and regarding the view, the obstruction of the view from the intersection of Union Ave and Union Street. Since then, we've made modifications to bring it down to a single-story structure. That structure would have a roof line that's no higher than the existing roof, and the view, and I'm happy to share some of the images, but the view would not be obstructed if someone were to take an image from, for instance, the Winadine's salon. That view down to the water and down to former Kenny's would not be obstructed. We're not raising the roof at all from where it is. It will get extended, but it's not going to get any taller than that. In addition, there was some concern raised 2 weeks ago regarding the necessity for a construction easement, because we were looking to go up to the property line. I have had a conversation with Mr. David Warr, and he said that he was fine with what we were requesting. He's glad to, if it's part of the decision, he's glad to provide a letter saying that he's
Who's
okay.
David Moore?
David War.
Oh, David Moore.
The trustee.
Okay.
And that he'd be happy to support the request and give us a temporary construction easement so that we could do the excavating there.
Oh, okay, so that's not, so there's a trustee for that area next to you? It's
Yeah, I
not
guess it's not the selectmen, but it's actually the selectmen, if I understood Selectman Slavin, the selectmen manage it, but then
They're
they
like the
don't.
custodians, but they
Right.
still need to go back to the trust.
Right, so Mr. Slavin suggested I reach out to David War, and he said he was happy to support it, so.
All right.
You got a guy waving in the back. We'll get to him when we get to the public portion.
All right, Wilma, what do you want to say?
Right now, I have nothing.
All right, Jim,
I'm good.
Carl, Jen.
I don't have anything.
All right, we go to the audience. Who's in favor? Favor. I hear none. Who's against? All right,
It's
wanna
not a
come?
matter of against, I just have a point of information about,
Come forward, Peter, please.
about something that the, hi, good evening, Peter Titlebaum, member of the Board of Selectmen. As regards anything to do with discussions with Mr. War and the properties that are subject to the decree and the Old Onset Bay Grove Association, the only issue I would suggest is that the Onset Bay Grove Association is currently a defunct corporation. We actually had to revive it for a limited period of 60 days in order to get the special legislation through to lease the bathhouse. So I'm not sure that Mr. War is in a position to speak for a defunct corporation at this point in time. Since the corporation is defunct, you can probably proceed without a lot of concern, but I just wanted the record to note that where the corporation is defunct, I don't know that there's an officer to speak on its behalf. So I don't think that should change your deliberations, but it's just a fact as far as what's going on with the decree lands. We're as selectmen, we're essentially function in the role of trustees, but we're not owners. So we don't have any power to convey or object to, sit formally with a butter status or anything like that. So it's the weirdest goddamn land in the country, I swear. So, and you get to deal with it.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will tell you that this evening, before I came here, I drove up Union Avenue. I obtusely or deliberately parked in front of any unit that could possibly try to have a view through the band shell in the back of this building. I was able to observe the height of the existing roof on the back of the structure, and I found it beyond a stretch of my imagination that what is proposed could obstruct any residential view. And I found it beyond any stretch of my imagination that really it could obstruct any view unless you were a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk on the same side of the street as this structure.
All right, ma'am, want to come forward? Name and address for the record again.
Jovina Dean, 6 Union Avenue. I had come before the first time, and then I wasn't here for the second. And I did send a letter and some pictures. Now, they've reviewed, but I haven't seen the new proposal. So I don't know if I'm for or against, because I haven't seen it. But it sounds good to me. We've been trying to get together, but she told me about it, but then I left for vacation, and I never got back to Lenny or Jamie.
Didn't want to interrupt your vacation.
No, you didn't. You just didn't want me to give you a hassle.
So you came before, you live on Union Ave, and you had issue with your view.
I sent him pictures
Right.
from my front yard, right?
This is the single-story addition.
Yeah.
This
So this is the bluff side.
This
This
is,
is where Guido's is
Yeah,
now.
so this is the bluff side.
this is what we had before, wasn't it?
Right.
It showed a two-story, now we've taken all of this off. So it's just a single story, and that would be the new roof, which would look like this,
See that, and that'll be all filled.
right? And
That's
it's,
Pictures on the file.
Yeah,
There are pictures here, yeah.
and it is, you see this existing roof here, right here?
right, that's right
That's-
there, right.
it's not
This is
gonna
what
be
I,
any
this
higher
is
than
from me
this.
to see, this is
Right.
the way I see it,
Right, so we're not gonna be any
higher than that. Okay. I'm in favor,
Thank you for your comments.
after all that.
You can supervise too.
She will.
She will. She's opening her ice cream parlor, I'll be seeing her every day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's so funny.
Anyone else in the audience want to speak in favor or against?
I make a motion, we close the public portion of this hearing.
Do I have a second to close?
Second.
Second by John, all in favor to close, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose, abstains, closed.
Not hearing any others, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to grant as presented. Standard conditions.
I have a motion to grant the variance. Is there a second on that? Can I have this pictures?
Second.
Second? Okay, second by Jen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wilma?
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah.
Carl? Jen, you made the motion?
Jim made the motion.
I made the motion, she seconded it. This is it.
That's it. What findings do you want? Standard findings?
We've got the,
We still have,
the deciding vote is deliberating.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment, if I might. The fact that the addition and everything is being proposed is so close to the lot line, and if nothing has changed from the last time, it would appear that footings and so forth have a potential for encroaching onto that property. And given the fact that Selectman Titlebaum has suggested there may be some question as to who has the responsibility, the obligation, I'm only suggesting that the board consider putting some sort of statement in there that it's not making any determination with respect to the easements or operation or construction and so forth that might encroach on the adjacent property. If the easements are in place, whether they be construction or whether they permanent easements for the purpose of maintenance or whatever, the absence of that, I'm just suggesting the board to protect your decision with respect to how you say it's okay, given the very close proximity to the lot line for construction.
how many days we have to render a vote?
I think it's like 14 days, I believe.
You've closed the public hearing. At this point, you have,
Till July.
45? Council, do you know, was it 45 days after we close?
No, technically, on a variance application, once you've closed the public hearing, the decision is supposed to be rendered within 14 days.
Within 14 days?
Yes.
Within 14 days.
Yes. You have ultimately from the time the hearing is opened to the making of your decision, you have 100 days.
Right.
And then you have an additional 14 days from voting on it to actually file your decision.
All right. It has to be in a public hearing to render vote, right?
Public
The
meeting.
vote has to be in a public meeting, yes.
When's the next meeting?
You have the calendar in front of you. I believe it's May 4th.
It's the 9th. The second Tuesday is the, Wednesday is the 9th of May.
So the 9 is 14 days. We could render a vote on 9,
The applicant can also grant you additional time.
but the 9 is 14, so we're good?
I haven't done the math, but if it is.
Yeah, it is 14 days from today.
Then that's fine.
All right.
Well, you wouldn't be able to file it with the town clerk that same day, though.
It's okay as long as we vote,
Well, the
as I
14
render.
days is really for you to vote and file.
Vote and file.
But the applicant can certainly grant you an extension of that period of time.
14 days is, that,
You feel you want the 2 weeks to make a informed
I just
decision?
want to make sure what Charlie talked about. I just don't want to come back.
Through the chair to the applicant, would you be willing to indulge us through the 14th? Extend time as necessary to get it filed properly and...
Can you give us, I mean, if we render on the 9, he can't file on the 9.
Right, so I mean, I would request an extension to the 11th, just to give you some breathing room.
Can you give us to the 11?
If I may, is it,
Is town hall opening on the 11th?
No, we're not,
So,
we're not
okay, the
open on
10th, at
Fridays.
least 10th,
10th, then.
a day after the hearing.
is it possible to grant, to have the vote and just grant you the additional time for the conditions?
It's, this is the thing, I just don't want to give my vote without making sure
He's
this,
undecided on which way he wants to vote.
that's the problem. I just want to make sure what Charlie said and Peter said before I give my vote, and that's.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused, only in that there's plenty of zero lot line buildings that are built. It's happens all the
I
time.
know, there is a lot. So let's do it for May 10. It's only gonna, I mean, if you don't give us an extension, we vote on the 9. And then it's not gonna help you because you don't have time to file it. So you have to
I'm
give-
just so close, I just feel like I'd like to get the vote done and put the conditions on it that you think are necessary.
We can't really
But-
put a condition on the variance, that's the problem.
Ultimately, you're not going to get your decision any sooner.
No, I'm
If the
I'm
vote-
fine with the time. I just need the positive vote.
We all do.
For planning purposes.
Withdraw my motion and ask to reopen the public hearing. And can we vote on that? If I
mean-
withdraw my motion, if we reopen the public hearing, I'll make a motion to continue this hearing until the next meeting. Then we're not under a 14-day window.
No, I think we don't have to. The
I'm
14,
okay
it's
with
on.
the time. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not-
let's do it for May 10. So we vote on May 9, we'll have all the things figured out, and the 10 you go file it.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things, just to make sure that you're aware, that you can put conditions on a variance.
I know, that's what I say, I just want to make sure, I know, I just said we can't put conditions, I just want to make sure what Peter said and Charlie said, so it's not gonna blow up in our face after.
Would you repeat what you said, Ken?
What's that?
You can put conditions on
Can.
it.
Can,
You
you
can.
can?
You may.
Can.
You may.
Hey,
May.
okay, all right.
Allowed.
So, all right. Okay, so that's good. So we do it until May 10.
I think that, may I clarify what you were suggesting, Charlie, is that we simply make it clear in our decision that we are making no findings with respect to whether or not the applicant has the right, has an easement for construction purposes or otherwise.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that without proper easements, I don't know that the board has the authority to grant construction over the lot line. It would be good if the easements were in place, whether they're temporary for construction purposes or whether they're permanent for the purpose of maintenance. The fact that they're not in place means that you will be granting a variance for a project that very well could encroach over on land that is not controlled by them. And I don't know that it really makes any difference that there are other conditions within the village of Onset that are like that. This is a new piece of construction, and you're being asked to grant a variance for that new construction. So whether it exists in other places, I don't think it has any bearing on the fact that this is a project which is being specifically requested, and that there are issues that clearly indicate there could be encroachment. I'm not an attorney, I'm just a land surveyor, but I'm just suggesting to the board that you at least make reference to the fact that you're not making any determination about construction should it go over the lot line, and somebody should complain, or if somebody during the course of construction were to get injured or something like that, and there's no
Right.
maintenance,
So what you're saying is that we should make it subject to the applicant securing proper...
that certainly is one way to consider it, sure.
Why don't we get an extension until May 10? In the meantime, maybe you could get from Mr. Ward something. What?
From War.
Mr. Chairman,
It doesn't matter?
We got another, Nazzy?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the applicant can't submit additional information unless you reopen the hearing.
I know, it's closed, but we're not supposed to even discuss it anymore.
I was under the impression that when I went to file, first of all, I'm not gonna go over, I'm not gonna put the structure over the property line.
You know, if I may, just get an extension, man. We're not supposed to even discuss it. It's closed, it's over. Let's give it until the 10.
Okay.
All right? If you later give us a little letter that you give us an extension for May 10.
Right now, I know I'm gonna be out of town that day. I'll try to change it, but if I'm not, my sister will
Yeah,
represent me.
that's fine. Just give us a little letter that you give us an extension. All right, so,
So we're continued.
No,
I
we're
withdraw
not.
my motion.
no, we're not continue. We have the right, without continue to vote.
Just schedule
gonna-
a deliberative session.
We're gonna, okay, we're gonna continue the vote.
We need a motion for that? No, do we?
I mean, if you're going to set the deliberative session tonight, it doesn't hurt to take a vote.
All right, so we'll take a vote on, let's see, May 9.
The vote will be taken on May 9th.
Yes.
The motion stays in limbo on May 9th. We'll bring it back up.
And we
We'll
make,
take our final vote.
very good. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second by Wilma, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose, abstain, very good, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you need anything from me?
They would just like the extension.
That one letter.
So I can send you an email or something?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is
we
is
have
an-
our
is everybody here for the comprehensive permit? Is anyone, Mr. Lockwood, are you here for the comprehensive permit?
Yes, and one other matter as well.
Where are you here?
I'd spoken to Mr. Butland about being on the agenda for a minor plan modification, but apparently it did not get to the agenda, and he suggested I undertake it under new business. Is that,
That's correct.
All right, but you're gonna be here for the 40B.
I was gonna hang around for that, yes.
Are you gonna be for the 40B?
I'm gonna speak on that as well.
Okay, so you
Capacity
could
as
wait.
the
All right, very well, so,
Housing Authority.
all right,
Before we go into the next, one, are there any paperwork on Onset that needs to come back to the folder? Do you have anything, Wilma? You got it? Jen? Carl, do you have anything that we want to put back in the folder from that last one? Go ahead. Thank you. Can I know?
Show. I thought about this time. All right, very good. It's hot. It's not hot.
Yeah, can you get that open more? I'm good, huh? Jen sometimes gets a little...
Do it for me. That's
We're
good.
gonna take a
All right,
few minutes.
everybody's ready?
No, Jen needed to step
Ah,
out for a minute. We're gonna take a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, we should sit up here, have Jim come up here too.
No.
Jake's not here tonight, but he'll probably review the tapes so that he can stay up to date on this, just
Why?
Jake. Just in case we ever
He
need him.
wasn't on it?
He's been here every other
Ah,
meeting, but he's
okay.
not here tonight.
Yeah, good, he can miss
So we-
one.
Yeah. And she's back in the room if you wanna.
All right, very well. Okay, we have to continue public hearing for petition 2-18 comprehensive permit, Dakota Properties 3102 Cranberry Highway. Public hearing still open. Mr. Just before we go forward, as I mentioned last time, let's keep this hearing, please, civilized and professional. Last time, some people made some comments that they were rude and unfair, so if they do it again, I'm gonna have not to listen to their comments. So let's keep it very professional, if you guys don't mind. Okay, Mr. Freeman?
Thank you. For the record, Peter Freeman, Freeman Law Group, representing the applicant, and our engineer, Don Rinaldi, is here, and Jim O'Brien, somewhere next to or behind me from Dakota. First, I don't want to digress, but I just want to, number one, thank everybody, some town people who who inquired about me, because I apologize that I just had a fainting thing. As Mark Twain said, the reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, because despite what the newspaper said, it was not, a heart attack, thank God. I don't have that. I've been checked out 10 ways to Sunday. So I've had it now and then. I don't want to belabor it, but, and Toby Hospital is wonderful, as well as your medics. I really have to write a letter and I appreciate the ambulance crew and all that. But I am fine. I really felt badly that you had to postpone the hearing, that I
that's
didn't find
fine.
out
We're
until the
glad you're
next day.
okay.
So, again, I just wanted to thank everybody and assure you that I am fine. So, with that said, what we would like to do is have the traffic presentation, our traffic report from Colleen Maderos, and do that. And then I know that there's been some peer review from Mr. Rowley of that. We also, prior to the last hearing, but I think our full response was submitted more recently, we had the peer review on civil engineering from Mr. Rowley, and we did submit a letter that had responses right after the comments, and most of them were in the engineering variety. Some of them, I helped write because they were, not quite engineering. So, I don't think it's necessary to go through each and every point, but whether we have, after the traffic presentation and questions, if you want Mr. Rinaldi to go through that, and/or Mr. Rowley, whichever way you want to handle it. The final thing that we want to accomplish is to try to move forward what the scope of review and how to handle the review on the water, on the sewer. We have worked out, and I have a check here for the peer review or the study that we've agreed to on that. I sent an email the other day to Mr. Buckland and the board chairman. So whoever you tell me to give the check to, we can do that at the end. On the sewer, we don't feel as though we changed our position, but we said we wanted to work out a scope, and we did feel that the scope was too extensive as well as too expensive, but we can deal with that in any way you want. I think it makes sense to go through the real substance of our proposal and the back and forth, whatever degree you want, and then hopefully before we conclude, we can have at least some discussion, unless between you folks and Mr. Haverty and, well, I guess everybody, Ken Buckland and Mr. Rowley, if you think that that might be an, out of the hearing discussion in the next few days to try to, agree on the scope, which we tried to do before tonight, but unfortunately we didn't. So again, I'm open to whatever way you think makes sense on that. So if that's okay with all of you, shall I turn it over to Ms. Maderos?
If I may, just to save time, just to put our ducks in a row, before we start to get into technical issues, I know apparently the town did not claim safe harbor, we know that.
Right.
We have 3 hurdles to pass. Anybody here from the sewer department? or the water department? Okay, you are. So, we just, before we go in technical things, I've read Charlie's report on March 23rd. It makes a lot of sense, a lot of it, for me. But before we waste your time and your consultant times and stuff, we have to make sure the water is okay with it, sewer with it, and the selectmen. So these three things have to come together. And of course, if they have a yes or a no, I mean, a yes is good. If they say, okay, we have capacity, I guess you're good. And if they have no, they have to have it backed up with some documents and engineering. So I'm gonna first listen to the water guy, you know, before we start to go into details and waste your time. Because to be honest with you, if they have solid answers, the water and the sewer and the selectmen, I am not looking, I'm not, you're not gonna get my vote to go forward. There's no sense, if they say that we don't have enough water and they can back it up with somebody standing up, engineer sign it, I'm not gonna waste your time at the end, say no.
We can handle it whatever way you want, and I appreciate that, you know, trying to cut to the chase. You know, if that is the ultimate result, then both the board and my client would have to deal with it and take appropriate action.
Right.
Of course, you know, if they are able to state any positions now, that's fine, but that sort of obviates the need for studies. I thought the whole point of appropriate studies...
We will do this, but I just wanna hear from the water person, and I wanna see what the sewer have to say.
Sure.
They might say, okay, so we'll see. Can you come forward, please?
Sure, that's fine.
If you don't mind. Name for the record, please.
Benjamin Hughes. I'm the chairman of the Board of Onset Board of Water Commissioners. I have an email here from our engineer, Sean Osborne, PE, of OSD LLC. And this is a follow-up to what was sent to us by Dakota Partners. And I'm just going to read this for the record. It's short. Kevin and Ben. Kevin is our superintendent. We have reviewed the information supplied by BSC Group regarding the proposed Woodland Cove development. The following information is missing and is required to conduct that analysis. 1, average day demand for the development. 2, maximum day demand for the development. 3, fire flow demand for the development. 4, location of flow and gauge hydrant used for November 22nd, 2017 fire flow test. We can generate estimated flow demands if the proponent is not able to do so. The response to our stormwater and well protection request for information appears to be complete. During the review process, we will determine if any additional information is needed. And that is from Sean, our PE. So there are 4 things that he still requires for his analysis.
My question is, they do these studies and it comes in their favor. What's your answer?
In whose favor?
In their favor. If they do their peer review and they say they could...
As long as the district's interests are protected and the water supply is protected, that is my interest. So as long as, and I cannot speak for the board as I sit here.
Right.
But as long as I am satisfied and the board is satisfied, and then we can probably go from there.
Right, so this is what I want to explain to everyone in this room. I know everybody is against the project, the town don't like these projects, but just saying no, very expensive for the town. I want everybody to understand, very costly for the town.
I would like to say one thing. I still reiterate and do believe that the ZBA, in all due respect, has no authority over the Board of Water Commissioners, over the department itself. The Groundwater Overlay District, it appears you do have authority over. But over our rules, regulations, fees, and permits, you do not. And that is our stance.
Okay.
So, and I'm just say one other thing. I have, and my board has, a responsibility to protect our water supply.
I totally
and
understand.
You folks here at the ZBA also have that responsibility, in my opinion.
Correct.
In my opinion. Okay. There are a few other things that may be coming along. When I looked at one of the maps that were blown up, it looks like one of our trails, it may lead to one of our wells, actually overlaps where they would like their development. So we might have to have some engineering work done to delineate a boundary line on that side. And there's several other issues as well. Just case in point, it looks like, excuse me, but it looks like this was a response from BSC Group. And one of the questions we had was, or Sean had, location of all infiltration BMPs, estimated TSS removal, rationale for classifying or not classifying infiltration BMPs as underground injection control wells, determination of whether or not proposed infiltration BMPs will allow the movement of fluid containing any contaminants into underground sources of water, and so on. Their response was, a determination on whether or not the project's infiltration BMPs is its best management practices qualify as underground injection control UIC wells has not yet been made. If the BMPs qualify as UIC wells, the required registrations will be submitted. The stormwater management systems, including infiltration BMPs, have been designed in accordance with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's stormwater standards for discharges within a Zone 2. And they go on to say the details of this design compliance have been submitted. I would like to ask one thing, and that would be this. When Massachusetts requires a certain, for your flow, when you're dealing with storm drainage, okay, you have to use a standard formula. And this must be a computational method, and I'll save you all the jargon here, but I do have one question, and that is basically, have you received, and speak through you to Mr. Freeman here, but a final certification pursuant to the Technology Acceptance Reciprocity Partnership, otherwise known as TARP. Has that certification been supplied to this board? It has not been supplied to me.
All right, well,
And
I'm
they
sure.
have used this standard
All right.
for infiltrators' stormwater management systems. So there's a lot of questions here still.
It did, Mr. Rowley did go through it, I did review it, there is a few questions. But these questions is not the basis. First of all, let me get over the hurdle if we speak for you or not. Mr. Haverty can answer this question. We don't make the rules, we just follow them.
I understand, sir.
Is the zoning board the granting authority in 40Bs?
My interpretation is yes, it is. So let me read you the definition of a local board from 760 CMR 56.02. Local board means any local board or official, including but not limited to any board of survey, board of health, planning board, conservation commission, historical commission, water, sewer, or other commission or district, fire, police, traffic, or other department, building inspector, or similar official or board, city council, or board of selectmen. All boards, regardless of their geographical jurisdiction or their source of authority, that is, including boards created by special acts of the legislature or by other legislative action, shall be deemed local boards if they perform functions usually performed by locally created boards. So that's consistent with the language that was discussed at our last hearing from the Dennis Housing Corp. Decision. There are, more importantly, there's Housing Appeals Committee decisional law. The Lever Development Corporation is one of the main ones that discuss water or sewer districts that are not under the umbrella of the town, but are actually independent districts. And the Housing Appeals Committee has held on more than one occasion that they are still covered under the umbrella of Chapter 40B. That being said, this board certainly can and should be working very, very closely with the water district and with the sewer district to make sure that all of their questions and concerns are being answered. So there's really sort of it's almost a moot point in terms of who has the jurisdiction at the end of the day. The question is there sufficient capacity? I'm sure that if this was solely within the jurisdiction of the water district and all of their environmental concerns and all of their capacity concerns were addressed, that they would issue a permit to allow a connection because that's what their responsibility is. So I don't think that the fact that this board will be sitting as the permanent granting authority under Chapter 40B changes the fact that you still have to make a determination that the water district otherwise would make, which is that it's not going to cause environmental problems and that there is sufficient capacity.
So, believe me, we don't want to make a decision for you. or the sewer, it makes more burden on us.
I understand.
But unfortunately, that's what
if
the
I
law
may-
is.
If,
Except the
if,
water
just
district
1 minute.
disagrees, you know, they certainly
If I may-
retain their, you know, their rights to take whatever action they deem
But
necessary.
as Attorney Haverty said, of course, we're gonna work closely with you, make sure you're satisfied.
Oh, yes.
But
Thank you.
40B, that's how 40B works.
I understand. There's one element that ties all these things together,
Okay.
which makes the district completely different. We are a sovereign autonomous district.
Right, but
Right,
let
but-
me
and
cut
the
it short
town,
for you.
the
Listen,
town and the
listen.
selectmen have no control
Listen to
over the
me.
water department
Sir.
itself. So if I may just read this
Sir,
portion right here.
listen, I'm not an attorney. Listen,
Mike,
listen,
this is
all
for
right, but I'm not gonna argue, this is what we pay Mr. Haverty for.
Oh, I understand. I respect
We
his
really
abilities.
don't care to vote for it. It's a problem for us, but unfortunately, that's the law. We can't, I mean, we could sit here all day, and we could say no, and we could go to housing court and pay tons of legal fees, and the applicants still win. So we gotta try to do it as good as possible. We're gonna work with you as much as we can, and this is the hurdle I just told that Councilor Freeman, that we're gonna make sure you have the capacity and everything. And this is your concern, your capacity, the drainage.
Our permit fees.
What?
Our permit fees as well.
Fees, everything. We're gonna make sure you get it all. My question is, so if everything, they pay the fees,
So if I
you
may,
have capacity,
I believe in win-win situations, okay? If I may.
okay, all right, so,
In win-win situations, I do.
so if the applicants satisfy everything you have,
My responsibility, the position that I hold, is to protect Onset's water supply.
and we all feel the same.
So, and I believe in win-win situations. What I do not agree with is granting a comprehensive permit to waive our fees, rules, and regulations.
That would not happen with
If I
this
may,
board.
this paragraph, one here, okay? Relating to Dennis Housing Courts, and this is just, and I believe you folks do have this, but in contrast to the old Kings Highway Historic District Committee, which was at issue in the Dennis Housing Corp. case, the Onset Fire District operates independently from the town, has no role in regulating building design, does not provide a function similar to any of the agencies referenced in Chapter 40B, Section 20, and does not issue the type of permit or approval referenced in Chapter 40B, Section 21. The analysis utilized by the Supreme Judicial Court, the Dennis Housing Corp. case, leads us to conclude that the Onset Fire District should not be deemed a local board within the meaning of Chapter 40B. Cases decided by the Appeals Court and the Housing Appeals Committee have similarly relied on element of control by the municipality in determining whether an entity is a local board, and that element is lacking with respect to the Onset Fire District. Now, that being said, I believe in win-win situations.
Okay,
I think we all understand each other, yes?
very well.
I'd like to,
Yeah,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind. Through the chair, and for the record, the reason you were brought up here was to save time for everybody. And what the chair is asking, and your response, is that you haven't, the chair asked, do we have sufficient capacity? You're unable to answer that.
True.
And the reason you're unable to answer that, if I heard correctly, is because you've asked for information that you haven't received yet.
We have not received all the information that we need as of yet to complete the analysis.
That said, we don't have an answer to the question, do we have sufficient capacity? Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what you want to know?
Yeah,
That's all we want to know.
so, okay,
And just the other portion for us is waiving our permit fees.
that's not a problem. Yes, Ken?
For the technical aspects of this, what I would recommend is that we accept the check from the proponent of the project and hire the consulting firm identified by the Water Department, Water District, which is OSD LLC, and have them proceed with the analysis of the water system.
Okay, that's good. Are you, yes?
No,
Councilor?
well, just for the record, as I said before the hearing formally opened, but my email transmittal confirmed it, we agree with that. And I think, and, totally respecting what he just said, sure, we think that the analysis needs to go forward, and we want to do that, and I have the check, and at the end of the hearing, you can tell me who to give it to, so we want that to proceed. The only other thing, 30 seconds worth, is, as I already said at the last hearing, I do firmly believe that the explanation from Mr. Haverty is correct in two regards. One, the case law is that all of those boards, regardless of how they're created, et cetera, are within the jurisdiction of the ZBA. I'm not going to belabor it, but we did get that letter. I appreciate their lawyer sending a copy to me, Gay and Gay. I haven't responded. I probably won't respond in writing, but, we certainly disagree with that position. So, in terms of moving forward with water, we think that, as Mr. Buckland just said, let's get the study started. I'm sure that my folks can provide the further information, and, not having it yet wasn't in any way saying we're not going to do it.
Understood.
So, we're just starting, and we look forward to that.
Well, I could assure you, like the zoning board, water, and sewer, we all we're gonna work together in this matter, and we'll support them 100% with what they want, unless, of course, if it's legit. So if they have the capacity and you comply with everything, apparently, we're gonna have to say yes. But if they don't have the capacity after the study's done, we're gonna support them. That's my position. Let's say you do the studies and say, okay, guess what, we don't have the water. I guarantee you the board is gonna stick up with the water. Personally, I am
understand.
going.
And I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to sound adversarial, but, even if it turns out that existing conditions show that there's not capacity, that doesn't mean end of story for a developer. The 40B law, without getting into it, certainly raises questions as to a town's obligation under 40B to provide municipal services. I hope we don't have to go there. We hope.
Well, we all hope we don't have to go there.
I understand.
Because we know the result. So anyway, so that being said, so we'll accept the check and we do the studies, and then we'll go from there.
We'll go
So
from there.
that's one thing.
Yes. And like I said, we do have that one other issue,
The other issue, the fees, you mean?
the fees,
Yeah,
yes.
the fees will not be waived.
And just to make clear, I think you already agreed, but so everybody knows, it would really expedite and be most effective if our engineer and team can contact you directly and the consultant and all of that. Is that okay?
Please, yeah,
Absolutely.
please do so.
Great.
Because we
Business cards.
also, I think we gave him what he asked for, but there may have been a misunderstanding on specifically what he
But
asked.
I cannot speak for him, but absolutely.
Obviously, I'm assuming he wanted something different, so I'd like to talk to him and just.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If Onset Water has an email address, I'll send copies of my letters if you don't already have it, because I put things in both of my letters from March and April that deal with the groundwater.
I did read March, but I didn't read
That's to
April.
you.
It would be, very much so.
I did read March, and I want to go over a few things, but April, I just got it yesterday, so I didn't read it.
Along with the certificate, that I do not know if you folks have been granted their certificate or not, since you don't know if you're injection wells or whatnot. So that is something I'd like to see as well.
Well, these things, you guys gonna have to
Takes
sort
time, I
out.
know, so we'll talk back and forth. But
All right.
the department definitely has issues, and like I said, my main responsibility, the boards, and I cannot speak for the board myself, I will protect Onset's water supply.
And we feel the same way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just exchange emails and numbers with the gentlemen. All right, sewer, who's speaking for the sewer?
I don't think there's anybody here.
I can fill in.
All right,
the
can
correspondence we
read
received.
that letter, see what they want?
Well, the Guy Campina, the director of the Water Pollution Control Facility, had proposed a scope of work that was, created an analysis of the system, and had submitted a scope of work for analysis of the system, and had requested additional information on mitigation of grease and rags potentially entering into the sewer system, and any other mitigation that the zoning board determines was warranted. There was a question by the proponent as to whether or not the scope was appropriate, in that it possibly looked at system issues beyond what was necessary for the project scope. I think I would recommend that the engineers, in the same way, sit down and have a discussion about the scope of work that would be appropriate for the analysis for sewer.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, to
Yes.
the extent it's necessary or helpful, I'm happy to participate in that discussion as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
and we welcome that. That makes sense. I appreciate that.
okay, very well.
That was Paul's idea.
I'm sorry?
That was Paul's idea.
I still like it.
All right, just for future hearings, if they're listening, it'd be good to have somebody here from the sewer department to stand up and answers, because right now, paper doesn't hold very much before an attorney and applicant. So I guess you're gonna have to work with them. And the same idea goes, same answer to the sewer, same like the water.
So if I can clarify the process a little bit, because I think we did have some discussion about this at the initial hearing. And typically, under Chapter 40B, an applicant is not required to fund new studies by a town. The peer review process requires the applicant to put money into an escrow account for review of studies that the applicant creates. But what I think, for the reason of efficiency, the applicant is agreeing that they would simply allow the consultants for the water department and the sewer department to actually create these studies in the first instance. So the only thing that's really being discussed is the scope of those studies by the water and sewer department's consultants.
Okay, so I hope they're listening. Okay, that's over. It's Mr. Titlebaum. You wanna come forward, please, and give us final view of the selectmen? What do you guys think, and where do you wanna go?
At this point, a couple of things. I will certainly convey to the sewer department that they need to be present at these hearings to the extent that they have any concerns about sewer capacity. They need to be here to articulate them to the board. The selectmen, I guess, at this point, much as you are, much as the sewer department is, much as the onset water department is, we're still waiting for information to be brought forward for the various boards that have concerns about this to take a look at things. For your board to determine what extent of peer review is going to be required. I don't think we're in a position to particularly comment on it at this point in time. I am going to ask the new chairman, Alan Slavin, I'm no longer chairman, we change our chairmanship with every election, to see if the board will grant me the authority to represent the board in these proceedings, so that to the extent that decisions have to be made on the spot after gleaning information, after hearing new information, I'm in a position to do so and authorized to do so. I don't like to get out ahead of the board as an individual selectman. That's never a good idea, but there are times when you have to respond quickly to things, especially when you're operating under a permitting deadline. So with that in mind, I'm asking Chairman Slavin to put this on the next agenda to vote to authorize me to speak on behalf of the board in these proceedings. So, you know, I would suggest that the board likely still feels the same way overall about the project that we did back in June and again back in the fall when we sent the letters to the applicants and to DHCD and as well to your board. I don't think that overall feeling has changed, but I'm not in a position tonight to show up here with specific gripes, if you will.
I understand, Mr. Talbot, but I know you have, your feeling is no for the project, but how can we cash in the no? I mean,
Right.
No, everybody's no, but what's a no, what's your ammunition? But this is the thing we're going for. Are you willing to say no, 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 and go to housing court and pay the tab? This is the question. I mean, that's what I said for the water sewer. If they have a grounds, no capacity, that's a great ground. It's although if it will fail in housing, but it's some ground. But just saying no, like again, just to tell everybody listening, we do represent the board, 22,000 people in town, and we have to be careful with how we spend their money, because you know this will be very costly.
Right, I understand all that. I guess what I'm looking for is to see what occurs once the information is in, all the information is in from the applicant. The information has been reviewed by the onset water department, our sewer department, and the other, any other entities that have a stake in this, to see what they say, and then to see what negotiation you undertake with the applicant, because as we know, the applicant comes in with one number, they often don't leave with that number.
Right.
And eventually, everybody goes away a little bit unhappy, which is really sort of the crux of what 40B requires. So again, I'm not in a position to comment on negotiations that haven't taken place yet. And I will get the authority to comment and make suggestions about those negotiations going forward.
It's it's very helpful if you guys come back with a vote that you could negotiate. And again, the sewer person, whoever the commissioner or the chairman of the commission can be here.
Yep.
So we could talk to somebody.
I'll make that point. Please understand, too, that we just came off of our annual election and town
I know.
meeting. So
I
it's
know.
never a good time for any of this, but that's, your applicants picked about the worst time coming in here when they did. And then unfortunately, with what happened to Attorney Freeman, that kicked things back a little bit, too, so.
In the snowstorm.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Which one?
The one we missed
The
a
one
hearing. We could have heard.
2 weeks prior to...
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna go to the public. I'm sorry, last time I said who's against, I never said who's in favor in this project. Anyone here in favor of this project? Yes, sir. Wanna speak? I assume last time everybody against, I'm sorry. Good evening.
I'm Bill Lockwood, and I am here this evening in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Wareham Housing Authority. Your board has asked the Housing Authority to make some response regarding this proposed project.
Is it on?
Is it on?
Green light's on.
Green light is on.
This one seemed to work.
This one better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. So that is the basis for my comments this evening. The Housing Authority, by definition, stands in favor of affordable housing. That's what we do. We manage 104 one-bedroom units in our two developments, Agawam and Redwood Village. We house 111 residents, paying on an average needs-based rent of about $400 per month. Of those, 25 to 30% are disabled, 20% are veterans, 20% are minorities, most are elderly. The Housing Authority also provides administrative assistance to 62 additional units that are privately owned as under MRVB voucher programs. The need for affordable housing in Wareham is immediate and real. We currently have a backlog of 850 applications, and our waiting list is 2 to 3 years for veterans, 5 to 10 years for elderly, 10 years plus for handicapped and non-elderly, 14 years for Section 8. Perhaps the most misunderstood piece is what is affordable. 40B, designed to help working residents remain in their communities, provides that 25% of the units be provided at 80% of the fair market value as determined by HUD. It's not subsidy housing. Wareham is included in as you well know, was included in the Boston rental market area. The HUD rates for Boston are $1,421 for a one-bedroom per month and $1,740 for a two-bedroom per month. At the 80% rate, that would be $1,137 for a one-bedroom and $1,392 for a two-bedroom.
Could you repeat those last two numbers again?
Doing the math from the previous, 80% would be about $1,137 per month for a one-bedroom, or $1,392 per month for a two-bedroom. In Wareham, these are not affordable rates, these are market rates. So 40B provides the incentive of one-stop permitting to developers in return for providing affordable units during this process. It's not uncommon for towns to be incentivized by compensatory payments. This can take the shape of educational, infrastructure, or other considerations. The state at one point even had a parallel program known as 40R, which provided direct payment from the state to the town immediately upon signature of the permits. The point is that it's a leverageable situation. It is somewhat pointless to rail against the process, saying it will bankrupt the town. That won't stop the process, and it won't benefit the town. So let's get something for it. I've heard a figure of up north of $10,000 per unit. which is about $2 million. As a direct and targeted benefit, the Housing Authority would advocate for the required affordable units to be provided at a reasonable fraction of the actual market rates, with the greatest allowable local preference shown. Alternatively, the Housing Authority would be willing to accept the donation of additional units to increase our stock.
What's the $10,000 per unit?
You just mentioned $10,000.
As a compensatory number that gets bandied about, that's a number I've heard.
For what? That,
The town,
The town kicks in 10 grand for their
no,
rent?
no, the other way around.
No, impact mitigation fee.
Impact mitigation, yeah.
okay.
And that may be, low, maybe, it's a number I've heard.
So the
Just to give you,
developer kicks in $10,000?
just to give you an idea, other towns like Yarmouth kicked in like $2 million. The town gave the developer $2 million. It's the other way around, unfortunately.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying? So
this is a negotiative process.
it is a good one, but unfortunately it works the
In those
yes.
situations, it tends to be one in which they're going for low-income housing tax credits. The state actually requires a buy-in from the community if they're going to allow that sort of a project to move forward, so it's not uncommon. But it's the town actually kicking in money on a limited dividend 40B application is less typical.
And unless there's a tax credit, like you
The
said.
tax credit, then the state wants to see a local buy-in, and then it's
Right.
uncommon.
So
And I
anybody
don't
kicking
get into the
in is gonna be a long shot.
So one thing, Mr. Chairman, I would ask is if you could submit this in written form to the town. I think one thing that's very important, what was discussed, is the potential for local preference.
Yes.
And in these projects, presuming the board approves some sort of comprehensive permit here, you do have the right to include a condition that requires up to 70% local preference. But that is something that's within the discretion of the subsidizing agency, and they're going to require that the town provide evidence of the need for that type of unit in the town, and it sounds like.
Yeah, we do have a
has
need.
Very good evidence that the
Right.
board could include. So I think it would be important to have that submitted into the record.
So, Mr. Lockwood, if you submit, and please come for second meeting, keep coming to every meeting. If,
Before he's done, I did-
yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
you said there was a waiting list?
Our current waiting list is about 850 people.
I'm sorry, I keep missing it.
The Wareham Housing Authority waiting list for our units is about 850.
850.
Yes, we have 104 units
Wow. 850 people?
on the waiting list.
So that would help establish the need for local preference.
So that's very important that we do local preference. All right, thank you, Bill. Thank you, sir.
And
Yes.
If I could get a copy, be it email from Ken, of that letter as well, as I forgot to ask, but from the water,
Bill,
from the
wanna
water
take
district,
his,
a copy.
email it if
Yeah.
you don't have a copy.
Yeah.
I may have an extra copy right here.
Or email tomorrow is fine.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
one more
I'd like a
question
copy.
for him, if you don't mind.
Bill, can we ask you one more question?
So, those 850 people on a waiting list,
Yes.
they're obviously, they're living somewhere, but
Well, maybe.
what, when they get in with you, they pay rent.
They do.
And can you give us an indication of how much rent they pay, or how they pay?
It's needs-based, and the average rent is $400 per month for a one-bedroom unit, which is all we have.
When you say need-based, you mean these are subsidized units such that
They are, in fact,
the rent is based on the individual's income?
Income and capacity to pay, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to the suggestion of making additional units affordable, because this is a rental, you're gonna get to count 100% of the units anyways,
Doesn't matter.
so you won't get any additional units if you did that.
There's no
And-
merit.
Well,
There
my-
would be more actual units in existence that would be more affordable. That being said, the regulations do not allow you to require that of an applicant. An applicant is always, can
Makes sense.
offer
I got it.
But you can't require it in a condition.
You can't require what I
You
apologize.
can't require a greater level of affordability
I-
than what is required by the subsidizing agency. although an applicant can offer it.
And you may ask.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone in favor? I see none. Against? Come forward. Ma'am, purple, please come forward.
That's okay, I didn't want to talk, I just wanted to.
Oh, okay, who wants to speak?
I'll go first.
Yes. Name and address for the record.
Lucille Dodson, 58 Fearing Street, Buzzards Bay, mailing address, but it's really in the Indian Mound Beach neighborhood, which is very close proximity to this proposed development. And I'm totally against it for various reasons. One, I'm sure you already know that the town here had to just close Minot Forest Elementary School, and now pods are gonna be getting to other schools to have to move students to be able to have these kids attend Wareham schools. These are the kids that already live here in the community. And so, as you know, our town is under tremendous financial stress and struggles. And I am very concerned of, you allow this 174 unit development to go in, that's gonna, round off 400 more children. How is this town gonna support 400 more students that is already the town struggling to educate? And all parents, I mean, if you get on Facebook and go on to the Wareham Facebook pages, parents are, up in arms of what are they, they don't want to see their kids moved into these pods, but there's no other choice right now. We have a population here in town that a third of our population is elderly. We are a struggling community. We're, a lot of us, myself included, I'm a single person. I own my own home, but I'm, just here treading water. I can't afford, continuing paying higher taxes, higher services, and whatever. And also, because I am in close proximity, I am on onset water, and we have awesome quality onset water. I am gravely concerned about how, if this proposed goes through, how is that going to change the quality of the water that we already have, and we're so fortunate to have. And again, with the sewer, I remember reading many articles in the papers over the last few years of people in town that live near the sewer treatment plant, that they had actually had headaches because, and I know you'll get the information when the sewer does show up, but that we are near capacity. This is too much of a large, I'm not saying we shouldn't help people. Wareham does. We have a lot of projects, and I don't mean projects in a negative way. I just mean buildings, veterans' homes, the list goes on of what Wareham has been doing and continues to do. But 174 unit does not fit into this town. And as my neighbor and friend mentioned on that list from the gentleman who just spoke, on his waiting list, how many of those people live in Wareham? Because we actually do know people that are looking for housing, but they live out of town, and they just go and get on any and every town list. So they might not even be, that list that he has of 800 people, may not be people living in this community. So there's a lot of different factors to really look into and consider. And again, I can't stress, I mean, if the least possible is do not allow the 174, reduce it to a figure that isn't gonna cripple this town. 174, we cannot support in so many ways. And I just hope that you hear us and don't give them any leeway whatsoever. Use the strength, whatever, that most town officials are against this. And so with that in mind, just hold steady and tight and put the biggest, fees on them. Don't go to the minimums. Make it, you work it to the best as your ability without giving them any leeways or variances or anything. And I am concerned too about, they said, well, yeah, it's gonna be built in 3 phases, and they don't have, I forget what it's called, the frontage, I think, on one side. Well, that's a concern too. And I am concerned. I don't care what traffic study they want to come up with. We all know, we live here, like I said before, sit in the parking lot, a 7-Eleven there, where just about this, proposed development's gonna be. Watch what happens there, and that is the stretch, I went to the DOT meeting here in town, and that stretch of highway is absolutely the worst of section, approximately 110 accidents happen every single year in that particular section. And I can't even imagine what it would create having this 174 unit there, spilling more traffic, going in and out on Cranberry Highway, and then in and out off of Red Brook Road. It would be a disaster, and it would be fatalities waiting to happen. And that's all I've got to say.
Just a quick question, what do you suggest a good number if you don't like the 174? Just suggestion.
50.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.
Moving, waving at you.
Yes, ma'am. Want to come forward?
Hi, my name is Debbie Ito. I live on, I'm sorry.
What's your name, ma'am?
Debbie Ito, Monac Road, which is right off of Red Brook Road.
Mhm.
I have a couple of things. First, I would like some clarification. I heard some numbers thrown out for rent. And one of the gentleman that spoke from the Wareham Housing Authority mentioned that a lot of the low-income and subsidized housing is about $400 a month. And I'm just curious as to what the affordable proposed development, how much they would have to pay for rent.
Well, the state will kick in.
The
The
state would
state will
kick in.
pay the difference, I believe.
So what Mr. Lockwood was referring to is subsidized housing. So that housing is based on a percentage of the individual's income. What these
Right,
units
mhm.
are, is they're targeted to be affordable for someone who makes a certain percentage of the area median income. So I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but it's not targeted at the resident's income.
Affordability is set at 80% of area median income, but the prices are set at 70% of area median
Thank you.
income, paying not more than 30% of your income on housing.
There you
So
go.
it's set by a formula.
So the affordable housing, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Let me explain it to you
That
quick.
being said, you could have a situation where there is someone that has a Section 8 voucher that can use that voucher to rent one of these units, thereby making it even more affordable for them.
I make a quick calculation for you. Say they're asking $1,000 a rent, and I work, say, at Burger King, I make $1,000. I pay $300, and the state would pay $700 in my behalf to them.
So
Something like that.
That's not how Chapter 40B works.
That's how they're affordable.
That's how the vouchers may work under Section 8, but it's a completely separate program and has,
Who kicks in the difference?
there's no difference.
So
So
the
with
40B
regards to the
doesn't
units
satisfy.
in the project, they will be priced, set by the formula, priced, for someone making 70% of area.
Can you make a
median
number, so make it easy?
income. Well, I
Say-
think
One
the
apartment
gentleman
can
from the
be
Housing Authority
1,500.
said 1,400.
One apartment can be 1,500.
It depends on the number of bedrooms too, so there is a
A
sliding.
three-bedroom,
Let's make an example.
a three-bedroom could be $1,500 for me, and it could be $700 for you.
Well, it's more like a three-bedroom could be market rate, could be 2,500, and affordable could be 1,400, 1,300.
Who's picking up the difference?
Nobody's picking up the
Okay,
difference.
all right.
What,
So it's
the
not
top,
subsidized,
I mean,
it's affordable, it's not subsidized.
Some of them are subsidized if you have a voucher.
Only if you have a voucher, but that's not subsidized through this project, that's subsidized through a voucher that's maintained by a
It's a whole different
housing authority.
program.
there's a
It's a housing
theoretical subsidy in that the applicant is going to be required to obtain a certain portion of the construction financing through, is this a New England Fund project?
No, this is actually a low-income housing tax credit project.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
well, so then, there actually is a subsidy.
So when you say the area average, as
So,
far as,
Peter, is it still at 80% or is this at 50%?
I'm looking at the PEL, Jim, if you recall offhand, and we'd be happy to provide that next hearing, I just don't, but it is probably the 60%, the majority of the units at the 60% of AMI.
Counselor, let me ask you a quick question. How many units, what's the percentage are affordable? You said what?
So, this is interesting, so the low-income housing tax credit program is an actual subsidy, in which that difference may actually be covered. So it's reducing the rent from the 70% AMI to perhaps 60, If they go as low as 50%, then they're actually only required to do 20% of the units as affordable. And the town can still count 100% of those units. If they're doing somewhere between 50 to 80% area median income, they have to have 25% of the units affordable.
Okay, so 25 the maximum, basically.
Correct.
All right.
No, well, just to be, just to be clear,
okay.
first of all, as Mr. Haverty said earlier, it is all controlled, regulated by the program and the agency, DHCD. On the tax credit deals, I believe the minimum is 40% affordable, and we may have proposed more. But, we are happy to, rather than just be guessing and relying on my poor memory.
I know, we're
we
just
can
getting
submit-
an
we can sub-
idea
We
and
can submit to you,
understanding it, that's all.
I
We're just
understand
trying
your
to
interest.
understand it.
Some tax credit projects are 100% affordable.
Right.
That's,
So if you would like it, we'll submit the, what has been shown to DHCD, and then you'll have the exact figures, which,
think you have
could
some.
change over time, but I mean, it'd give you a better idea.
Well, in the narrative, excuse me, through the chair, in the narrative presented by the applicant, I don't know if this is beneficial to this conversation or not. Introduction, first paragraph says, 106 of the dwelling units representing 60.9% of the total will be affordable to households earning no more than 60% of the area median income, in accordance with applicable state regulations
Yep.
and guidelines.
That stands?
Thank you. You found it quicker than I did, so, that
Okay.
is what is
Believe it or
presently
not, we
proposed.
read some of this stuff you give us.
Thank you.
What was the percentage you just read?
60% AMI.
60%?
Let's,
60.9% of the total
174, it's 106 units.
will be affordable for,
it's on page 1 of 7 in this booklet, if you have a copy of it.
All right, anything you want to add?
I would like to, I'd also like clarification on the area median income. Was I correct in hearing that it's included in the Boston area? So,
Wareham is metropolitan Boston, believe it or not.
Federal issue, it's not something there's any local control over which statistical mean area your town is included within.
so affordable here might be really not affordable for Wareham folks, pretty much what it comes down to.
Which is why it's good they're doing it at 60% rather than 70 or 80%.
Okay. And could I also speak to I know you mentioned earlier you were going to do something about with the traffic report. Could I also speak to a few issues in there?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. First of all, the first thing I saw when I read this was, I live in the area right off of Red Brick Road. One of the entrances and exits is onto Red Brick Road, which is right across from the 7-Eleven that also has 2 entrances and exits into it. So between those 3 there, and then people coming down Red Brook Road and people going onto it from Route 28 or Cranberry Highway. And I believe there's going to be a U-turn there or something, and a set of lights, and all kinds of stuff going on. So that would concern me as far as all of a sudden, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different areas where people are going to be entering one spot, potentially. The second thing, on page 5, is the dates that they used for the traffic studies that they included in here were from January 4th and May 2nd. With maybe a 24% increase, they said, for the January 4th to compensate for a traffic differential for whatever they tried to say. But to me, those 2 dates don't even come close to reflecting the amount of traffic that comes up and down those streets especially during the 3 months during the summer, but also further into the year. And those studies were done. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah. So just that the dates don't reflect the amount of traffic that travels up and down Red Brook Road especially, but also down 28. So that would concern me because that's not accurate at all. The third thing is on page 7, even on their report, it says it's between the years 2012 and 2014, it's a high crash location, according to the federal numbers. Over 2 times the amount of accidents happen there that happen federally on average. And that study's 4 years old. This has been a huge increase in traffic since then. So I can only imagine the figures are even larger. So that is also inaccurate. And the last thing is, throughout the study, a lot of their resolution to a lot of the issues that are raised traffic, as far as the traffic is concerned, relies on the state project that has been delayed for how many years, may not happen, and if it does happen, may not happen to completion. So for them to rely on a third party's actions to solve some of the issues that are raised in this traffic, I don't think is a good idea either.
Well, the traffic study will be reviewed by town consultants, so.
Okay,
All right,
wanted to-
thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Joseph Mulkern. I live down off of Red Brook Road, the same as one of my neighbors there. My question is, how are we getting onto this property, off of Red Brook Road or off of Route 28?
It's got two entrances, Red Brook Road and 28.
Both? In other words, that motel's coming down?
The motel's coming down.
So where's the entrance gonna go, off of Red Brook?
There's a map right there, sir.
Okay,
on
see
the
it on-
board.
okay. And the height of the buildings now, the area I live in there's no buildings that are gonna be four stories high. Why, what's the need for these 4-story high buildings?
Well, apparently the density they're requesting and the permit they're applying for, we cannot enforce the town bylaws, and the town bylaws is 35 feet, and apparently they go in 42, maybe 46. See, this is the nature of 40B. That's something of
So
the
they have
process.
to, is this residential property, or is this?
Yes, or residential, yes.
So they have to go before someone to get permission to go height-wise?
Well, that's where they are here, that's us.
Okay.
It's actually largely commercial and then residential in the back. The zoning district.
It's zoned
The zoning
commercial.
district.
Oh, yeah, it's got a line that goes through
Right.
it.
Right, but the
So
front,
the property is somehow a 2/3 commercial and a third residential, but they're proposing residential on the whole thing.
Okay, I think that.
There's a line like 500 feet back for commercial, I guess, from the center of the
So the
highway.
motel's coming down, and there's gonna be, but the entranceway is going to be,
Where where the motel is and a piece on Red Brook Road.
okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. What was your last name, Joseph? Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right. Here none, I guess we gotta ask some questions. Just to get into technical, I reviewed Charlie's comment. Do you wanna say something before I go forward?
yeah, just, it's up to you, but we do have Colleen Maderos from,
Yeah, okay.
for
Do you wanna
the
come forward?
presentation, so, thanks, our traffic consultant.
Colleen Medeiros, you said?
Yes.
Good evening, Colleen Medeiros with McMahon Associates. I'm a registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth, and we prepared the traffic study. We've also prepared 2 response memorandums in response to Mr. Rowley's peer review comments. So I'll go over the traffic study because it seems like there's some questions on it. It was prepared in accordance with MassDOT standards, state standards. It's broken down into 3 parts. We look at existing conditions, we look at future conditions, what happens in a 7-year horizon without the project. So that's where the MassDOT project comes into play. And then we look at 7 years, what happens if the future MassDOT project with the proposed project being built, the 40B project. And then the last part of our study follows on the results. So we do the operations, see how the intersections are going to work, and we can make our conclusions. So for existing conditions, we go out in the field, we collect data, measurements, and then we do traffic counts, and then we also collect crash data. So the traffic counts were conducted at the Route 6 Red Brook Road intersection, as well as the existing motel property. As they were mentioned by the public member, spoke that we did collect, just because of the nature of the project, we started, and it was started collecting in January, and then we did another count in May. However, this is kind of something we deal with regularly as traffic engineers. So we follow the state standard, and we look at seasonal data, and we did a 24% seasonal adjustment, which is actually fairly a big adjustment, and that represents an average condition. And then in our latest response letter that I have copies that I can hand out tonight in response to Mr. Rowley's April 23rd memo, we did look at that summer peak condition that has been, brought up about that 3 months of the year is when there's a larger spike in traffic. So that actually is another 24%. So we did a 48% increase in traffic volumes to represent that summer peak period. So that also is in comparison, is an appropriate seasonal factor based on the MassDOT study. MassDOT's been studying this roadway and intersection in accordance with their project that's coming down the pipeline, and our seasonal adjustment factors are in line with what they've also used. So it's an appropriate analysis. So we did traffic counts, and they were done 7 to 9 a.m., 4 to 6 p.m. That's the typical peak period of when a residential project would peak, because people are going to from work, school, and those times. And then during the traffic counts, we look at the worst hour in our analysis. And then we looked at the crash data. We did the latest 5 years that comes from the state. And we did note that the Red Brook intersection is a high crash location. It's probably no surprise to anyone. It's above average. But there was a road safety audit that was conducted by MassDOT. They're aware of the problem, and that's why this MassDOT corridor project on Route 6 is coming down the pipeline. And I can go into a little bit more about that. That project is currently being advertised for construction. So they're seeking the bids from the contractors. Though that project is viable and it is going to be federally funded, it has a construction cost estimate of $18 million that's being invested by the state to improve this roadway. So this is a great opportunity for the Wareham to improve this roadway, and it's complementary to this proposed residential project to have this improved access that will address operational issues and safety issues. So that is coming down the pipeline, so you'll start to see, hopefully, shovels in a year or so. Spring 19 is when the construction schedule would begin. The biggest part of that project will be the signalization of this intersection, Route 6 at Red Brook Road. Currently, it's not. It's unsignalized, stop controlled, and it's on a bend, as we've found that there are some safety issues. So a traffic signal will greatly hopefully reduce the traffic crashes, improve safety. They're also upgrading the 3 other signals, starting around Home Depot signal, the old Walmart traffic signal, and then the main Ave signal are all being upgraded. All those signals are also going to be upgraded for pedestrian access as well. Sidewalks will be installed along the Route 6 corridor on both sides of the roadway, as well as bicycle tolerant shoulders. So this is a huge multimodal project as well that's coming down the pipeline.
If I may ask you, is the state putting a signal there on that corner?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yep. Oh, and I'm sorry, and the other big element of that project is a median is being installed from, that vicinity of the Home Depot traffic signal all the way past the Red Brook intersection. It'll end just right in front of where that Sears Plaza and the gold watch jewelry. So just past Red Brook Road, the median will end. So with the median installation, now all the commercial driveways, it'll all be right in, right out. So they have to build U-turn, I call them U-turn bulbs, at the signalized intersections to allow for people to reverse directions. And that one of those will be installed at the Red Brook Road intersection. So U-turns will be occurring at this intersection in both directions. And MassDOT's done their own analysis, their own traffic volumes. They're not going to spend $18 million to make sure this. They're going to make sure this intersection is going to work, and they'll be continuously monitoring it once it is built to make sure it's working at its optimal performance.
If I may, you said that this is out to bid. Is there any projection on when this project Route 6 corridor will commence, when the construction will begin?
Yeah, based on, I have the hearing, there was a hearing February 15th here at a town hall, public hearing from MassDOT. I wasn't there, but this is the public handout, and based on that information, it just said that construction commencing in spring 2019, so in a year. Yep.
I know they start doing the taking now, so. All right, 1 minute.
So, and then let me get into, that was all existing, so let's get into what the project impacts will be. As traffic engineers, we look at, it's called Institute of Transportation Engineers, it's a trip generation handbook, and that's how you estimate traffic from development. So that's what you do when a gas station's gonna be built or residential. So based on that, we plugged in the 174 units, and then we distributed those new trips into the study area roadway. Route 6 carries 20,000 cars a day. So based on what this residential project will generate, it's gonna be a 5% increase in traffic volumes, which is not gonna be a major impact on the roadway traffic. That's an arterial roadway that 4 lanes in each, 4-lane cross-section, 2 lanes in each direction, and has the capacity to take on the additional traffic from this development, and as well as the signal upgrade obviously is a great benefit for this project. So there's not gonna be a major impact on traffic volumes. I think the construction, I don't know how long this process is gonna take for if this project were to be approved. So we're assuming that both the projects will align with the construction. But so as I stated, the signalized intersection is going to work adequately with operations. That we have 2 proposed driveways. The one on Cranberry Highway is going to be essentially right in, right out, because a median will be installed. So that will operate with little delay. And then there's the Red Brook Road driveway that will operate at full access. So that's where left turns can go in and out. And people from the west will have to enter the site at the new traffic signal. They can either take a U-turn to get to the western driveway, or they can just take a left turn and head down Red Brook Road to enter the site. But we see that both driveways will operate with minimal delay at adequate levels of service. And this project isn't really going to be a major impact on traffic. And one of the things from the peer review was this summer, and I know noting that there is a big increase in traffic volumes and congestion, but that's kind of an existing issue that's related to the Bourne Bridge, Cape Summer traffic, and most notably weekend is when you really see the big spike in traffic. And with the residential projects, you mainly see the larger impact is when there's people are leaving for the morning and coming home at night, and that's typically your Monday through Friday. It's when you're going to see more of the traffic impacts from this type of development. So I'm happy to answer any more specific questions, but based on, we concluded that there will be a minimal impact associated to the traffic operations within the study area with this development.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freeman. Yeah, we'll get to you. Do you want to say anything?
No, we wanted to present that. We know that there's been some back and forth already, including one which, as Ms. Maderos just said, you haven't seen yet, neither has Mr. Rowley. She'll hand it in, but it, is responsive to his review of the traffic report. So, again, as Ms. Maderos just said, certainly we can take questions, but we certainly expect and want to have any outside conversations between both her and Mr. Rowley after the hearing before the next one, as well as Mr. Rinaldi on any other site civil engineering questions.
Thank you, Colleen. Debbie, quick, just quick, come forward, because it's getting late and we have ourselves a lot of questions.
Okay. All right, so I was, number one, the MassDOT study, I wonder if it was done with the existing conditions or with the 40B? Because then they would have all the accurate information with the 40B going to go in. Number two, the back roads, it sounds like everyone that's going to go into that development is going to have to go through that light at Red Brook and at Cranberry Highway. They're gonna, so whether it's pulling a U-ey or taking a left or whatever, so everybody's gonna have to go through there, which is, I mean, it gets backed up on a good day anyway, so this is really, for everybody to have to go through there is crazy. And to avoid it, they may want to take the back roads to the neighborhood, some of which are just over a car width wide, where kids are going to be playing, and it's going to be a lot more dangerous. So if they're trying to avoid that light because they don't want to sit in the traffic, they're going to be cutting through, and it's going to create a really hazardous situation for the small, previously vacation neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lucille. Also, quick, please.
As I stated earlier.
Can we just take a 1 minute recess? We all have to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
Just thank you. It's been long.
All that coffee,
Okay, we resume. Yes, can you please be quiet? Hello? Yeah, I need to go. All right, Lucio.
Okay, as I stated earlier, I was at that DOT public meeting, and the whole thing, first of all, that design was back in like 2012, and so when they designed that whole area to get redesigned, they never anticipated that there would be 174 residential units on that road and also in that intersection. So I feel that it's basically a moot point of what that transportation person was saying, because it will impact. And even having, they're called loons, those half U-type shape to take a turn, having potentially, okay, 174 units, if that goes in, then say everybody has 2 cars, because a lot of them are gonna be 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. That's gonna be a considerable amount of extra cars. Absolutely, that will impact Cranberry Highway, but also that intersection, whether you're trying to take a turn onto Red Brook Road, or whether you're trying to turn onto Cranberry Highway, whatever it is. But the bottom line point that I want to make is, when they designed that, they never had it that this development was going to be in place when they created that design. So you need to also think of that, because I really feel that if the state knew that, say, something like this was in place already, 174 unit, they probably would have a whole different design. That's my point.
Thank you. Just for the record, Mrs. Medeiros is a professional engineer, so I'm sure she knows what she's doing. Quick, please, because it's getting late.
Our study did take into account the DOT project, and so we did that study.
To us, ma'am. All right, thank you. Thank you, hello. Just keep it to us. All right, I want to go quick on the letter from Mr. Rowley on March 23rd. We'll have a chance for everybody speak, so, but I read it. It always comes back that making those 3 permits separate is a problem. So I know you want to do a tax credit and make it 3 projects, but the problem is, as I've seen from Mr. Rowley's review, it impacts the parking, impacts the drainage, impacts the entrance, impacts the welcome center. So what is, well, I don't want to answer from you today. I'm very uncomfortable with doing 3 permits. Is that the only way you could do it, 3 permits? You can't do it 1 permit?
Well, phases is what you're talking about. 'Cause
right.
It would be, but so, you know, Jim, unless you have anything that you'd like to say now, we understand the question. You know, certainly makes sense for us to absorb what you just said, and we'll talk about it, and, you know, see if we can say anything that would satisfy you next time. You know, I don't want to make
All
up
right,
any-
also another thing came to my attention in the project layout on the 3rd comment from Charlie. If we are to grant any permit, the motel has to go first. It cannot be on your 2nd project. I will not be willing to participate or vote for that. Again, I have a question in that little commercial parcel in the front. The zoning, the water zoning district there, it allows only 15% of your total area as an impervious. So if you are to build something, this is like 30,000 square feet, right? The front parcel?
You're talking about the one
that you're not building,
that
that you
you're carving out, that's not part of the proposal, yeah.
So if you are to come before the planning board or zoning board in the future, you can only build about 4,500 square feet of building and parking. That's all what you could do in it. So I don't understand why you don't combine it with that project. What are you gonna build 4,500 a parking and a building?
But the quick answer is that the seller wants to keep it, you know, and we don't know their plans. They obviously intend to do something, I would assume, at some point.
I know it would really help this project go better, in a better direction if it's combined with it. Other things Charlie had mentioned about drainage, about grading, parking. he added the parking on section, and the plans on the sheet C10, C1.0. You guys are providing 72 parking. You really need 121 parkings on a parcel in the building A and B. In building E and F, according to the numbers that Charlie came up with, 121 parkings, so you short 61 parkings, you're coming up with 68. And building phase 3, C and D, you need 88 spaces, you're putting up 22. Is that a reason why you short in parking? And why?
We do respectfully disagree. We can, Jim, next time submit prior to the next hearing, the data from your comparable projects and other ones that I'm familiar with, and there is data, so no disrespect to Mr. Rowley, but we think that his figures are off. They also operate, they not only develop, but they own and maintain and operate projects, and their ratio of parking to units is very comparable to what they know from experience is adequate, so.
All right, well, I'm gonna I have a chance to Charlie to speak on this quick. I'm just going to this quick. We need the fire department to comment on some utility plans. We need for the connections and stuff. I know Charlie mentioned 8-inch water main, if it's proposed, if it's sufficient. I think it's enough, but I mean, if they want more, that's something they have to do. Fencing, we have to talk about fencing. And Charlie brought a good point about the drainage. If you do it in phases, some of the drainage is not gonna be adequate for that particular one. It has to be all combined. I'll let Charlie answer this. So if you do phase 1, that drainage you're gonna have to jump into phase 2 to have adequate drainage. So my real concern personally, I mean, all these details we could sort out with Charlie. My real concern, the motel has to go first out. And that commercial lot, I want you to think about it, see what you're gonna do about it. It makes a big difference if you add it to this project, because to be honest with you, I built in this town and I'm a developer. I own property in 4,500 square feet. It's not gonna get you, you're not gonna do nothing with it. Something to think about.
Mr. Chairman, could I address a couple of your concerns?
Sure.
Jim O'Brien with Dakota Partners. So the intent of the motel staying into phase 2 was that hopefully when we build phase 1, there might be an opportunity to transition people into the new housing. That is based on applications, income, the subsidies involved. So we strategically set the motel as phase 2 for that reason. We think it's better in what's called the transition plan, and this was identified with the HCD and received well. So that's the reason for that process.
I would guarantee you the whole town of Wareham would disagree with this, and I do too.
So in any event, I wanted you to know the understanding of the phase.
I guarantee you right now, my vote will be no for the motel. The motel has to go first.
I understand. I just wanted you to know the strategy.
We have big issues with motels in Wareham. So, okay, keep going.
The parking, I think Mr. Rowley, and I'll let him speak to this, was referencing the zoning in town. We have a majority of one-bedrooms and a different unit type. So in our other communities, we have seen 1.3 parking spaces per unit has been adequate throughout the projects that we've built, and in fact, been a little bit more than what we've needed. The open space in the green area, oftentimes parties say to set aside some of that for parking if you feel as though there's a necessity for that in the future, and that could be accommodated. But we don't like to pave more than we have to, and we will turn in statistics to show that in our other communities. The fire department I have met with respect to the fire hydrants locations, and they asked for some movement of those locations into the landing areas, which will well accommodate. And then they also asked for some hard pavers between two of the buildings so that they could position a truck properly and get to the rear and the front and all of that. So we can accommodate all of that, and you'll see that in the next design change when Mr. Rowley and BSC get together on the components.
All right, like I said, these details I'm just talking about the concept as a board.
Sure.
Details, we're gonna have to work with the engineer, but as concept, is there any way you could do, I really don't like the phases proposition. Is there any way you could combine the whole thing I mean, I don't understand, if you buying this project from the same person, why can't you do the whole deal now?
The simple answer is that the tax credits are issued with a capped amount on each award, so it might be $5 or $6 million. You only have enough to build a couple of phases at a time, and the awards are spread out over the course of a year, year and a half, as I identified before. So we might do an application in November. We may not get an award till the following March or April, and then close on that phase in June. We start to build that phase, then the next application goes in the following November, and the same cycle through the 3 phases. So they have caps and the awards that are actually identifying the phases for this particular site.
I know, but my concern, say you build the first phase, how many units in the first phase? 52 units, right? Now you get 52 families living there. You're gonna have traffic driving in front of them to build the back unit, dust, noise.
No, as you're seeing, the phase on the right would be the first phase. The second phase would be the one on the left where the motel is, so that would have a separate entrance for its construction.
It is a hassle, but we will have to sort this out. I wanna turn, I know you, gentlemen, your name please again?
Dominic Rinaldi.
Dominic, he wants to say something, then I wanna let Charlie speak something. So did you wanna say quick?
No, I was.
All right, I wanna turn it to Charlie, give us a brief.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a couple of things that I wanted to get back to the traffic study, if I could, just for a minute, and ask Ms. Maderas a couple of questions, if I could.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if she would explain to me, or explain to you, the ITE traffic study and the number of trips per day that are generated, say, per unit, whether there's any way that that study relates to the number of vehicles that might be there per unit. If she could address that, if there's any way to, say, put those two numbers together. In other words, the whole project as a whole, based on the number of units, and the ITE number will give you the number of traffic movements for a day. Is there any way to translate that to the number of vehicles that are actually on the site that would be using that number of trips? The second question I had was, and this is, I think, a general concern that I have for most traffic studies that we see. It's traffic studies that are based on existing conditions in abutting highways and the impact on those highways of a project. Typically, projects themselves don't impact the highways. It's sometimes the other way around. What we haven't heard anything of is with the development that they propose, and you touched on one issue of it, and that's with respect to the construction equipment going back and forth. If it isn't between phase 1 and the rear, it'll be between phase 2 and 1 and the rear when they get to that back phase. But the other question is, in terms of the movement of traffic, once the highway gets reconstructed and you get the intersection at Red Brook Road done, you get the median in the middle, which means that left turns cannot be taken from that highway. The U-turn then will have to go back in order to make a right-hand turn coming from, say, Walmart, what used to be Walmart. You have to go through the intersection and either take Red Brook Road or make the U-turn to go into phase 2. That's going to have an impact on the internal circulation throughout that whole project. And I'm just wondering if they could speak to the various traffic movements that will occur on the site. Because to me, that's just as important as it is the number of movements that you see on Cranberry Highway. She did suggest that it's a 48% increase on the highway, but that in itself doesn't necessarily impact the site. It's what happens in the site. And the way that it's been designed, all the traffic has to pass right by that central area which is used for open space. So that all the traffic has to go right by it every single day. If there are children there, if there are people trying to walk back and forth during the summer months, there's going to be that interference all the time. So I'm just wondering if they could address the internal circulation as a part of the traffic study, even though most traffic studies get generated for the state highway or Red Brook Road. So I'll start with those two.
Okay. You take notes? That's apparently she's gonna answer next time, right?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, one more thing also get my attention on Charlie's thing. Did you guys have any 21E done for this property?
We did a
Did?
21E, and it caused a Phase 2, which we also conducted, proper water and monitoring wells. And as Mr. Rowley pointed out, we could use those to help with the water table and some other analysis as we study the water department's concerns.
Okay, because number 6, you had some concerns
Yeah.
about a oil
That-
tank and some lead.
Yes, in the initial study that Green Seal did, I believe it was in June of 2017.
Right, May 2000.
Yeah, they addressed 2 or 3 items that they felt needed additional work. They went back in November, I believe it was, of 2017, and did a follow-up study.
They did Phase 2, right? You did Phase 2.
Correct.
So that
Right.
would address it, apparently.
In that Phase 2, they did 8 test borings, and they ended up with 2 monitoring wells, which went to groundwater. So that they have some up-to-date data on the quality of the water, the groundwater, and the conditions that are there on the site. Unfortunately, that data did not get included in their Green Seal letter, recent letter, but I'm sure they have it, and I think it would be appropriate to have that in the file. And depending on where the monitoring wells are, I'm not sure whether they'll have to be moved or not for the construction, but my suggestion would be that those monitoring wells be maintained, or if they have to be relocated, they be put in appropriate locations so that you can intercept the groundwater before it leaves the site. So that you will have not
For
only
the future testing, you mean?
Right, not only a baseline for today, because you've got the groundwater that you can monitor today and get the quality of what's there, but you'll be able to monitor it in the future to see if there's been any changes. So that information would be very helpful, and is something that
Well, I
should
guess
be
we
passed
could
on.
make a condition that could leave this monitoring well exposed in the pavement with a cover for future testing.
Well, assuming it's in an appropriate place, it may be that it would interfere with the building, I'm not sure where they are,
Well,
so.
okay. Well,
So-
I'm sure that whoever did the 21E, they mandated by the state. I'm sure they reported to the state, so if they saw any lead and oil, they would have comment right away.
If they didn't find anything, so it would be good to have that information as a current baseline.
Okay.
Then you've got something to measure against in the future. But the data was not provided with the letter, so my recommendation is ask them to provide that data that was done in November of 17.
Can you do so, please?
Yes,
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, yep.
All right, what else, Charlie?
Just a comment about the parking.
Yeah, the parking, we have to sort out the
I did a
parking.
comparison between what the zoning bylaw requires for parking as opposed to what they've counted. Now, what I did on the large sheets was, in my study, and this goes to page 6 of my March letter. What I did was I took the plan, and based on the number of single apartments and the number of 2+ bedroom apartments in buildings A and B, I figured out the total number of spaces. If you take and just count the number of spaces in front of building A, and then count the number of spaces in building B, you'll find that in order to reach that total, you've got to go way beyond where those buildings are located. So in each and every case, none of the buildings are even anywhere near close to having the proper number of parking spaces if you go to the zoning.
All right,
That
even,
was the only
isn't a
comment.
one-bedroom apartment requires 1 parking, right?
Yes, it does.
And a 2-bedroom, 1.5?
2,
No, 2-bedroom requires 1.5.
no. No.
It
It's
requires
1.5,
2
it's
two?
1.5 spaces for a single and 2 spaces for 2 bedrooms up.
Ah, okay.
So that's the calculation I did. It was only for comparison. But when you take that total number and project it out, you'll find that for, say, the first building, you're halfway into the next building's parking spaces in order to accommodate that. So as a part of my second letter, what I asked them for, since they raised the issue in their reply, was that they have other projects that they say their parking numbers work. I've requested that they give us the location of those buildings, what town they're in, whether it's a similar number of units, and what the parking count is, and whether or not there is other parking available that they can use. I think that's the only way you can compare it, to see whether or not the buildings and facilities that have already been done are similar to this, to know whether or not the number of spaces they propose for this project will really work.
I know Union Pond has a problem already with parking. They're parking on the grass. We get calls every day on it. Yeah. So,
How many parking they have there?
what they have over there. I know that, if you drive
when-
in there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're parking in handicap fire lanes, they're parking on the grass.
Yep.
Because they don't have enough parking over there.
I do know that when the nursing home project over at Rosebrook was done, the same general comment was made, well, this has worked out for us before.
Can we check on Union
Ask
Pond?
them to give us the information as to where these facilities were and how many spaces there were, just to get a comparison. I don't think it's enough to say, well, we've done spaces before and this works. I'd like to see where they are, because it may be that the number of spaces will work if there's ultimate other parking that's available, or maybe it's in the middle of a city where the environment is entirely different. So we don't know that right now.
That's why I think that commercial lot, if it's combined, will be beneficial to everyone. One quick question, how many handicap units you doing? Is there a mandate? I know in the town we require 1 per 25, but is there any mandate, councillor, is there a mandate for 40B to do any handicap apartments?
Not a 40B requirement.
Not 40B, okay.
But it might be architectural access board requirements?
Yeah, do you have that offhand, what the Architectural Access Board requirement is?
For accessible units or spaces, actual
No, units.
residential units? No, I don't know that.
You guys don't propose to do any handicap?
I don't know, Jim.
Do we have handicap parking spaces on the
handicap
site?
parking
How many do we
spaces.
have?
We have,
No, I'm not talking about parking, about apartments.
he's talking
Oh, the
actual
apartments, the
residential
ADA
units.
requires at least 5% of your apartments be made accessible. We do that by what's called an accommodated apartment. So we design the apartments that we need on the first floor to have removable cabinets and
Okay,
all
and
set
put 'em-
to be transitioned to ADA upon request.
Oh, all right. I just want to go quick to Mr. Titlebaum. You want something quick, please? You want to say?
Just with regards to the notion that they want to leave the motel up and then phase people from the motel into any new construction there. I don't know if they're aware, but in 2015, the Board of Health passed a long-term motel stay regulation, which limits motel stays to 21 days, and they're actually pretty vigorous about enforcing it. And the motel owners have gotten the message that we don't have long-term stays anymore. We don't have the state putting people in these facilities any longer as temporary housing. So that's really not a reason to keep the motel going at this point.
If that's the client you're looking for, you're in trouble.
Thank you.
Exactly.
All right. So, well, like what Mr. Rowley was saying, again, this is, all his comments comes back being 3 separate projects, parking, drainage, all these issues. So there's something we really have to discuss with Mr. Rowley, and again, consider that commercial property for more parking. Charlie, you want to keep going?
I don't know how deep you want to get into it.
I mean, if we give them as much concern so they could address it next time.
Probably the best thing to do would be to refer to my April 23rd letter,
Yeah.
the more recent one. The only questions I had on traffic that was in that letter, we've sort of discussed already. And now the 2 questions that remain are what I had just requested a few minutes ago. I did comment on the environment assessment by Green Seal. So that if we can get that information and get it into the record, provide it to Onset, I think that will be helpful. I do have a comment on the project layout with respect to the open space. 3/4 of an acre has been set aside as that open space area in the middle, a portion of which is to be used for stormwater drainage. I have a concern over that stormwater drainage. What happens is that you're going to get a collection of runoff from the pavement areas and some of the roof areas, and that will be discharged into one of these 2 temporary, I'll call them bioretention areas, that will allow surface water to collect up to a certain point. And then it will spill into an outlet that goes into a infiltration basin that's underneath.
My concern with that is if it was isolated in some place off by itself where it wasn't gonna be such an attractive nuisance to children, I wouldn't be so concerned. But to make it a part and incorporation of a very small area that's gonna be used for general recreation and just passive recreation for families, especially in this density, I don't think it's a good idea to have
So
those
you mean-
open basins in the open space area.
They have an open basin or they have a cover?
No, it's not covered, it's open, it's graded, and in one end has a catch basin, so that the water's allowed to fill up in that basin to a predetermined height. Then the excess, if it gets up to that particular height because of the intensity of the storm, it goes into the collection basin that's underneath, which you don't see.
Okay. Do they have water oil separators in these catch basins?
Yeah, they have gas and oil separators. I do have a concern over what may or may not occur. They're right, I had put in a comment that the type of oil gas separators that they're putting in are fine for oil, for grit and for sand and so forth that may occupy the parking area if they sand it in the wintertime. It doesn't really address the issue of other types of contaminants. I'm hoping that maybe some of that will be addressed by the study that is done for the Onset Fire District. Because any contaminants that are not taken out of suspension and trapped in those units, either in the catch basins with their oil gas traps or within their separators, if it's the kind of thing where it's not suspended in the water, it's going to get into the infiltration system. And we certainly don't want to see contaminants go into the groundwater. Especially at this point, we don't know. I'm assuming that the hydraulic gradient is toward their wells. Now, it may not be. It may be in direct opposite direction. But with the drawdown that you've got from their wells, and it's the only one that Onset has, my concern is that we know what the hydraulic gradient subsurface is, and that there be no other materials that will go into that groundwater to pollute it. But the main portion that I'm concerned about right now is this open space area with these open drainage areas that are unprotected against children getting in them.
All right, let me ask you, do you know which way the water flow goes there? Does it go towards the Onset Water Department or towards the
Groundwater
ocean?
flow? I don't know offhand. My guess would be, as Mr. Rowley, that it heads towards the north.
Towards Red Brook.
Yeah,
It
there's
may go toward Red Brook. and it may be-
Sandy Pond, is that the name of the pond that's back
Yeah,
there?
that was a water supply that they had, and they no longer use it, but they've got wells that are between Sand Pond
Yeah.
and Red Brook. So I suspect that the hydraulic gradient is toward Red Brook as.
It is?
That would be.
Just quick. Please, quick, yes or no?
Sand Pond, I do believe he is correct, and off the top of my head, I can believe Mr. Rowley is correct. And another thing as well, the sheet flow for the 100-year storm, I do believe, increases towards the north, which is towards Sand Pond, which is our old aquifer.
But which way the water go, towards you?
Towards the north,
All
towards
right.
Sand Pond, and I do believe Mr. Rowley is correct off
Okay.
the top of my head here.
There are
Charlie,
maps-
let me ask you
There are maps
something.
available that'll tell us that.
All right. Drainage, if they do drainage like I did on Charge Pond, would that would work, wouldn't it? Instead of have open basins?
Well, it's similar to what you did at Charge Pond, is they have that as well. But what happens is that you may get contaminants that will go into the catch basins that overflow because it's
Well, we
it's
gotta
not
monitor
separated
it
out.
somehow with the alarm or something.
That is where the monitoring wells would come in, so that you'd have an idea before it leaves the property whether or not there's any issue. So, I know from their response that they said, well, nobody is legally supposed to throw anything down the drain. But we know that happens. There may not be anything we can do about that, but certainly with the monitoring wells, that will help at least alert somebody to the fact that something is wrong and they need to pay attention to it.
So the monitoring wells will have some devices to make an alarm, you mean?
Not necessarily, what happens is you would drive the wells down far enough so that they are well within the groundwater table.
Right.
You get an elevation on that well and you monitor it on a regular basis so that you know from month to month what is happening.
I would say water oil separator catch basins all around before they go in the leaching field, and that would be a lot easier to monitor. I mean, it's a good
Theoretically-
idea,
Theoretically, a gas oil trap in a catch basin will do the job for a small spill.
What's a small spill?
Well, somebody decides they want to take an oil can and dump it down the drain.
I think they do
Pot of
50,
oil or
60
something like
gallon
that,
or more.
It'll hold it, because oil floats, and if it gets that deep, it'll still be held in the basin. But my concern is, right now, other than that, is the fact that those two basins are open within that open space area. And I think the kids need to be protected.
Yes.
So whether they do it with fencing or whether they relocate it, it's an issue that I think we need to talk about.
Before we leave oil water separators.
Yeah.
If oil water separators are gonna be on the site, is there any regulation or mandate or control as to how often they're cleaned?
Generally speaking, there is an operation and maintenance plan that is presented, and I think that it's part of their stormwater management report. I don't remember what the frequency was, but I believe it's in there.
Okay.
So it would make
It's
sense.
provided for.
Right, and it would
Somebody
make
goes in there,
sense.
their transmission blows, it rains, it goes down the drain, it catches it.
Theoretically,
Before it
yeah.
leaves the drain.
Theoretically, it
the
does.
capacity should be such that a vacuum truck comes and takes it away.
But, yes, but unless that is monitored on a regular basis as a part of their operation and maintenance plan, and somebody does something about it, theoretically, it could leave. So I think that the plan that they have, and I'd have to look at the frequency with which they do their inspections, but for things like that, it would be a good idea to do it on a regular basis, a monthly basis, just to be sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be.
All right, also, one thing caught my attention.
Can I comment on that?
That stone dust walkways.
Can I
What's up?
comment on
Yeah,
that, Mr.
sure.
Chairman? So, we certainly want the best interest of the town water covered in whatever capacity that is, and the safety of the children is obviously our concern. We run these properties. The basin that was created has plant life and different things that we do as a process of it. It's kind of like a rain garden, if you will, but it's something a little bit more and larger. We are not opposed to, if the board would like to see that system completely underground. It just gives a grass turf up above, so we can do that if that's of the advice and the opinion of the board. The grass and water separators and the monitoring wells, I certainly expect, and that's why we authorized the study for the water department, of its engineer in any capacity it needs to do. Whatever it recommends for proper oil and water separators, the size of those within reason, and the monitoring well locations to have both sets of protection for the aquifer, we're certainly not opposed to. So in no way, I'm glad that we're having this discussion, and we can certainly move to those goals.
All right, so again, on your detail sheet 6.2, sheet C, you have stone dust walks.
Yes.
What about that?
Well, we don't like pavement walks within the green area. We think it tends to look a little commercialized, so we have them rolled down, compacted, and they're maintained with our other landscaping throughout the year. So we just like the look of the stone dust in respect to the walking trails and such. We've tried mulch and different components, and it's too loose. You can't pack it down or get it as tight as it would be. And we really don't like asphalt within the...
How about pavers?
Well, they're expensive, and it's an affordable housing deal, so there's a lot of walkway, and the stone dust has been easier to maintain over time. The pavers can, with frost heave, become trip hazards and things for the kids, so we kind of prefer the surface consistent.
I know, but imagine snow shoveling from stone dust,
We
tracking
don't snow
stone.
shovel the walkways in the winter. Those are in the village green. All of our walkways and sidewalks are all pavement.
All right, we'll have to discuss this.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
just on
go
the
ahead.
Stone Dust Walkway, if I can point out.
Yeah.
It's this central area. The walkways in front of the buildings are all either asphalt or concrete.
Yeah, they're all pavers leading to the buildings and all of the access to the parking lots and everything necessary. We call that a recreation area.
All right, well, some questions.
I have some questions. You want to start with Wilma, or do you want to? Wilma, you, nothing?
Jimmy?
She's all set?
No, she don't have anything.
Okay. I want to reinforce what's been said before. regarding the 3 phases and the 3 lots.
Mhm.
And the elephant in the room, as far as I'm concerned, is Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 is landlocked. 3 separate corporations. Corporations go bankrupt independently. Phase 3 is left there landlocked. There's no such thing as landlocked land in Massachusetts, blah, blah, blah. I don't like the proposed method of purchase. I'd like to, and on that vein, what the chairman was saying, I don't like the front being developed before the rear. I don't know if, I like the rear developed first, so that when the front is developed, construction traffic isn't going through the kids are out there playing in your grass area, and a concrete truck comes through, or backs up, and, you don't want it, I don't want it. So, for what it's worth, if there's a way to buy the parcel as a single parcel and do some kind of a progressive purchase with the seller, I don't care. I mean, that's for the lawyers. All I'm saying is that I know, lawyers aside, I mean, we make all our jokes about every profession, but it would be real easy for the back phase to end up becoming a real problem. So I just don't like it separately owned. I'd like it developed first, never mind separately owned. That's just my input. That's regarding the 3 lots. Regarding the commercial piece out front, I get the wisdom of keeping that separate. It's not even part of the project. When the project is done, you can sell it, you can flip it, you can do whatever you want with it independently. From a business point of view, I get it. I look at that little arm coming off like a pork chop, and I perceive that to be potentially vehicular access. I look at the project as a whole, and I hear everybody talking about the 1 entrance, 2 entrance, ins and outs, and so forth and so on. And if that, what I call a pork chop leg, were gonna be for vehicular access for a commercial purpose in the future, I think it would enhance this project if it was paved now, not in the future, and cars could cut across from side to side if they want to go out the east or west entrance or whatever. Instead of driving the horseshoe, they cut right across out there. That's just, maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but these are the things that I'm seeing. The water bit, I think I don't mean to water it down, but I think we've talked that enough. So I don't have any comments at this time. The number of units, maybe there needs to be a little take and give on that. That's subject to further discussion. Lastly, out of everybody's control, we lost 2 weeks out of our deadline due to weather. We had a meeting, it snowed, it was canceled. We lost another 2 weeks for health reasons. I'm suggesting to this body right now that we extend the deadline for this project by 1 month.
I think it's a good idea.
Jim, if you want to talk privately, we can, but I'm certainly not going to say that's unreasonable.
Let's see what's the deadline on that? When do we have to
Well,
close it?
I think you mean to the 180 days to close the hearing?
The 180
Right.
days, I say let's extend that 180th day out 30 days right now so that we don't get to day 150 or 160 and...
August 22nd, you said?
27th, I think?
All right, so we have until August. We'll discuss it in June. If we get there, see how much, if we need time. I'm
I
sure
hear
that-
you, and I understand.
Let me ask you a quick question. The Welcome Center and the grass area, when you propose to build, when you propose it, when is that supposed to go? With what phase?
That's in Phase 2.
Phase 2. See, that becomes a problem again. I mean, I know you're a good businessman and stuff. Say you build Phase 1 and things go sour.
Any parking for the Welcome Center?
He does have parking, yeah. Do you understand what we're trying? So it's very, I would accommodate or consider building C and D in the back, build the whole welcome center and the grass area, eliminate the motel. Then you could, as a first phase. And then, but start from the back forward and do all, like the welcome and all this.
So the
Because we really don't want to see the back C and D, how many units are there, 50, 60, and who knows what the economy brings. I mean, I've seen it happen, and then we're stuck with a bunch of apartments in the back, no welcome center, nothing.
And that was the theory behind putting the Welcome Center in Phase 2, is that if we only do Phase 1, and we're not discounting the fact that's a possibility, without question, no one knows where the economy's gonna be. If you do Phase 1, you don't have a need for a Welcome Center. There's a limited amount of units, there's not the desire or need for something that big of a facility, and as well, it can't be financed within the first phase. What the second phase does is gives you a little bit of the first phase, and a little bit of the second phase to do that. What I will propose is that, just to give everyone the level of comfort that the Welcome Center is coming and that Phase 2 wouldn't be built before that Welcome Center and that you don't get stuck with apartments, that we would offer to build the Welcome Center prior to any building permits being issued for Phase 2. That way you know it's coming and it's underway right after Phase 1.
If you do Phase C and D, you're talking 48 apartments. Under normal conditions, you could probably get here 13 apartments. To leave us stuck with 48 apartments, no welcome center, no greens, this is hard. I don't think, I
How
personally
about if we agree to the Village Green? I don't have a problem with that. It's the Welcome Center and the financing of that. And then I'll just ensure, you can put in the decision that no permits will be issued for Phase 2 until the Welcome Center is started. If it's the Village Green and the open area, we can certainly include that in Phase 1. It's the cost of the Welcome Center, obviously, we've tried.
How big is that welcome center?
I think it's about 12 to 1,500 square feet.
This is minimal if you're building 48 units.
It's, you know, a couple of $100,000 that's not available in Phase 1. And the reason is we have all the infrastructure. As you've pointed out, in Phase 1, a lot of Phase 1, we have easements for the drainage basins and whatever's necessary to complete the system. We have to build all those in Phase 1. In addition to the turnaround, the fire department requirements, the cul-de-sac, all within Phase 1.
I do understand, but I'm a builder myself. If you're doing 48 units, this is minimal to the construction. If you're spending the money on 48 units in C and D, and it will make your life so much easier for the future, believe me. For the other phases, it make your life so much easier, less hassle, less details, less everything.
You know, as you understand also, as we lease these units up, we may change that Welcome Center based on the clientele and what they want. There may be a business center added, there may be a different fitness center. To force all that on the first phase is unreasonable in that we may want to change that as we lease up Phase 1 and find out what might be available to do before we start Phase 2. So there's a number of reasons we never build the Welcome Center in the first phase. Financially, it doesn't model with respect to your first award and all the other work you have to do. Second is there may be changes that we want to implement before we actually start Phase 2.
I'll have to sleep on that, so
Can I take another
go ahead.
question? Looking at the horseshoe again, can you tell me where the dumpster, the compactor, whatever, that facility, where that's gonna be? I'm not seeing it. Can you point it out for me?
Sure.
Is it shown here? I'm just not seeing it. I'm not.
It is the best plan to see. It might be,
It's between D and E is what you're telling me. Is it the back of the parking lot? Is it?
yes, it's this
It's in there?
funky little.
Well, Mr. Chair, let me just clarify.
Yeah.
As the phase is built, let's say we build the first phase, the end of the parking lot will most likely require a fire department turnaround. We'll have the dumpster there till we build Phase 2. When we build Phase 2, then we'll put it in a more appropriate center
So
location.
it'll move with the phases.
Absolutely.
But in the final project, it's going to be to the northwest of Building D,
Yes.
and that'll, I assume that'll be some kind of a enclosed area.
Yes, we have a full enclosure.
I'm sure you have a plan. I was somewhat impressed with, I just heard testimony that there's insufficient parking at Union Pond, but one thing I did see at Union Pond that I found very favorable was they have an 8 or 9 foot high concrete wall. They have a section for the compactor dumpster. They have outside that area, they have stairs going up, concrete stairs, like you'd see in a fire escape in a building, to a concrete platform, and a door opens up and the trash goes down a chute, and the compactor runs on as-need basis. And then, of course, there's a couple of double gates to open for the truck to empty it. But then there's another double gated section right to the side of it that I thought probably accommodated a second dumpster. But being the curious fellow that I am, there wasn't a lock. And it's a corral for mattresses and couches and lamps and things that people like to abandon on private property. So I very much like to see that. I very much like to see that Union Pond has provided a way for things that would otherwise be illegally disposed of to be handled.
That's a very good idea.
I think I'd like to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. Jen?
I don't have anything to add tonight.
Oh. Not yet. 15 more minutes. Council, yes,
Jim?
go ahead, Charlie.
Just one comment, and this goes back to your comment and Jim's comment about building Phase 3 first. And then it was alluded to with some of the other discussion we've heard, that all of the drainage for Phase 1, in order for it to work the way that they have proposed it, requires the construction of drainage facilities in Phase 3.
Yes, we do
To be
that.
completed altogether.
Yes, we do that through easements.
So, and one of the other things that has been suggested is that within Phase 3, there would be a temporary cul-de-sac for Phase 1. There would also be a temporary driveway for Phase 2 within Phase 3.
All right,
Both of which-
if I may interrupt, this is where the problem comes in. Well, you have a purchase and sale with the other property. What happens if you don't end up buying those properties?
Well, we have at the closing secured all the easements necessary for the infrastructure per phase. That's how we do the closing of the first parcel. 'Cause as
So
Mr. Rowley
the
pointed
seller
out-
is giving you easement for the drainage and the parking? On
Absolutely.
the whole thing?
Turnarounds that we need for the fire department per each phase, and the drainage structures as they need to be built.
Well, they need to be built up from the front, from beginning.
Yes. So if we have a drainage structure in the back corner that has to be built to accommodate the first phase, as I stated, that's a lot of cost that we have to have in the first phase and complete.
Keep going,
My
Charlie.
thought was, just to lay the information out there, that a lot of the infrastructure for Phase 1 needs to be done within Phase 3, including the temporary cul-de-sac, including the temporary driveway, which I have commented on in my April 23rd letter, that there wasn't any detail on either of those particular facilities, the cul-de-sac itself or the temporary driveway. I can't recommend a plan approval that doesn't have the grading, materials and so forth, and it may be suggested, but I want to see details on the plans.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, if Phase 1 happens first and nothing else gets done, you want to be sure that that infrastructure is in good shape, that it's not going to fall apart because it was done in a temporary, sort of a haphazard way. You want it to be well done, and it wants to be done so that when everything's completed, and you got Phase 3, if they go that way, that maybe you don't have to rip everything up to build
Yeah.
it properly.
Not to go off the subject too, on the back corner, you have a steep, like the elevations go down quick, you might need a retaining wall. I saw here quick, the elevations drops quickly in the back somewhere.
It does. If you go to the plans and look at Building D, There's a drop in grade there. It goes from elevation 70 next to the building to about 64 next to the drainage area where it spills
Yeah, I
over.
saw it somewhere, that might need a
Yeah.
little retaining wall.
Mr. Chairman,
It might be
Yes.
necessary.
can I just back up 2 minutes? Mr.
Sure.
Rowley's comment on the temporary driveway and the temporary cul-de-sac and details on those. I guess I was ultimately going to ask him this anyway, based on his letter from April 23rd. I guess I was looking to know exactly what you wanted, because in our response to his March, I forget the exact date, original peer review letter, we discussed that that cul-de-sac and that driveway will be built to the same pavement details as the rest of the parking and driveways, and we provided phased drainage calculations showing that should, for some random reason, Phase 1 be built and the project never proceed, the stormwater management still complied with DEP's requirements, and, or, you know, continuing on, should Phase 1 and 2 be built and not 3, that it still worked. So I guess I'm unclear as to what additional details you're looking for.
The details that Mr. Rinaldi is referring to may be due to the cross-section, which deals with the depth of base material and asphalt that goes into paving those. What I'm looking at is grading, final grades, where the water is running to, how it's collected, and so forth. That's the type of information I was looking for that I don't believe are on the plans, because it's simply laid out as temporary. And realizing that as it gets built out, and the need for that cul-de-sac disappears, because now the circulation is within the parking areas, that's fine. But if that doesn't occur and the cul-de-sac is now permanent because something is not being done in Phase 3, I want to be sure that the grading is proper and that it's got the same standard of quality construction that the rest of the parking areas have.
Mr. Chairman, we'll provide that
Yeah,
for
no,
Mr. Rowley.
Certainly,
All right.
points well taken, so.
All right, it's getting late, so,
Can I ask one question?
yes.
There's a parcel of land on the lower right side there that has a single-family home in it at this point, and it's shown on almost all the plans, except it's not shown on some of them. Was that calculated or what's the intent of that? And was it used to calculate open space and coverage in the,
No, that's just an existing abutting lot, and the reason it's shown depending upon the plan and how far off the project we showed on that given particular plan. It shows up in some and other, but that's just a single foot. They don't have ownership of that house. That's just a house that's abutting the property.
okay, thank you.
All right. Charlie, you want to add anything? I mean, there's a lot of details has to be discussed.
Yeah, just let me go back to my last letter just to make sure that there isn't anything outstanding.
500, the apartment, the 2 units for them.
The only other thing, I had made a request for further information along the edge of pavement for Cranberry Highway and Red Brook Road.
Yep.
Because there was a single spot grade for each of those locations, and then the comment back was that Mass DOT will specify the details of construction. They will for Route 6 and 28, but they won't for Red Brook Road because that's beyond their jurisdiction. That's a local street, so that comes under municipal maintenance. So in that case especially, I want to be sure that the runoff that's coming down Red Brook Road is appropriately handled, that we're not introducing more runoff onto Red Brook Road because of the gradient, that we're not taking any runoff from Red Brook Road. And that would be something that I could determine if there were additional spot grades just along the road edge of pavement to see what's happening. Right now, there's simply one spot grade at the center of the intersection, and that's hardly enough to determine where the water runs. So
All
I'm
right.
just asking for that.
All right, so where are we gonna leave these gentlemen with homework to do? I guess the traffic engineer, you're gonna have to do some studies or answers. Okay, come forward, you gotta be on record. Make.
Two minor questions, I believe. You just want, a trip generation per unit. Typically, ITE does it for the whole project.
Yeah, right this way.
Sorry. ITs for the whole project, the studies that they gather aren't just for one single apartment, it's apartment complexes. So I don't know really what that will lend it to you, how it'll be helpful. We look at the big impact of the 174, but I can try to.
I'm just wondering how that translates in terms of if there's a way to correlate that with the number of vehicles that would be associated with 174 units, irrespective of whether it's 40B or not.
Yeah.
Is there any way?
I just don't know where that lends
The
it.
trip generation with the number of parking or the number of vehicles that would be associated with 174 units.
We look at it based on, the daily, what it will generate, and then the peak hours, because that's where we analyze the impacts from as a traffic engineer. We don't look at what one apartment unit generates.
I'm not asking you to look at that. I'm wondering if, in the way that they have come up with their number, and you'll go to a table in that book,
Right.
and you'll find so many units, or you might find
Yep.
a use that has a certain number correlated to trip generation.
Yep.
I understand that. What I'm asking is there a way to correlate the number of trips for that size development to the number of cars that might be associated with that same number of units?
Isn't that what we provided in the traffic study, though?
The question is, through the ITE process, can you figure out the vehicle generation?
I was going to ask,
the
are
trip
you,
generation?
Mr. Rowley, are you basically trying to figure out a corresponding number of parking spaces that may be required?
Right.
Because there's ITE trip generation, and ITE also does a parking generation as well for different land use codes.
And
If they do that, could you give us a number on what they recommend for this size of a unit based on the parking requirements?
Sure, yeah.
Actually, we are in the process of preparing a response to your letter from the other day, and that was one of the questions, one of the questions dealt with parking, and I teach parking generation, 4th edition, for low to mid-rise apartment in suburban locations, which is what this would correspond to as a use. They recommend 1.23 vehicles per dwelling unit. And we'll get you that in writing and everything, too. So.
And Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
just want to clarify, we have 260 spots, which is 1.5 per unit, designed now as the site sits. We've only experienced 1.3 on our other sites, and we'll provide Mr. Rowley with that backup.
Okay.
All right, we should sort this
That's
out.
helpful.
All right.
Yeah.
It's getting late. So I guess we're gonna have some communication to sort some things out. It's very important that we discuss drainage, how we're gonna approach it. Drainage, just priority phases, which we have to come up with a plan next time, what we're gonna decide on where are we going first, which phase. Consider that commercial lot in the front, I really would like to see it combined with that project, because believe me, it's useless for you for the future. You can't do much in it.
Mr. Chairman, we're only purchasing the residential portion, and we've allowed the pork chop and the access in case there's fire department or access needs to the roads. The commercial is up to the seller. We haven't made it part of the project, and I hope you would reconsider. If he decides that 4,500 square feet is fine, and he wants to do something boutique that might help and benefit the residents, that's really up to the seller, so it's not part of this application.
With all due respect, I look at you paying us, you way overpaying for that property, but that's not my business. So anyway, all right, any additional questions before we close for the night? All right, so we'll set to continue this public hearing until on May 9? May 9?
Yep, May 9th
Okay.
is good.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to continue petition 2-18 for Dakota Properties, 3102 Cranberry Highway until May 9. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, 500. Thank you. Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. Thank you,
Thank you very
adjourn. Thank you, Bob.
Thank